GB News. Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Devolution revolution. The government finally unveils its plans to level up the UK.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, February the 2nd. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Today, the government has set out wide-ranging plans to improve life in parts of Britain, including providing more power to the regions.
But Labour says the plans don't go far enough. We want to know your thoughts this morning. Email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk.
The Prime Minister will announce state-backed loans to help people cope with rising energy prices. Is that enough to solve your cost of living crisis?
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson's getting tough on the world stage, warning Russia that Britain will hit Moscow with sanctions the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukraine territory. We'll have the latest on that.
Hello there. A guest on our programme later this morning, the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove, will announce that a dozen pledges from his long-awaited blueprint will be enshrined in law, and they will set the government's agenda for the rest of this decade.
The Levelling Up strategy aims to close the gap between rich and poor parts of the country by updating infrastructure and changing the way power and money is distributed.
Well, Wolverhampton has been named alongside Sheffield as one of the first places planned to benefit from the programme.
Our West Midlands reporter Balvinda Sidhu has been there to get reaction.
Recession kind of hit this place and we never really got out of it, as you can see evidently by the high street. I think there's been a lot of migration from across the country and immigration as well, but it's been a lot of poor people and there's been no affluence and there's been no money, not particularly skilled people. I used to work in recruitment for a number of years, and Wolverhampton's notorious for being a black spot in terms of skilled.
It's like a third world country at the moment, yeah. No one's got any money and all the shops are closing, you know, it's a ghost town. So he's been here quite a few times, Boris, so he knows exactly what it is like.
It's not a lot of shops for young people, and there's actually quite a lot of young population in Wolverhampton. You know, you got football fans coming in all the time, like, you know, they might want to go shopping. People go to the university. They've actually all travelled. Many of them are from Birmingham or London. Like, you know, none of them even want to stay in Wolverhampton. They want to go straight back. They don't even want to, like, whether staying here.
Housing here is not good at all. You do have to wait quite a lot, even in the private market, or say if you want to go the government, still it's very hard to find, and especially with the prices nowadays as well, especially when you don't actually have a job, then it just makes everything much harder.
You know, the thing I find with Wolverhampton, any approach from out of the area into Wolverhampton is not aesthetically pleasing. It needs attraction, some colour, some modernity.
Outlying areas, improve the housing estates, encourage house building, property development and so forth, and encourage younger generation to come to Wolverhampton. There's got to be some attraction for them to come to Wolverhampton.
It's a run-down place. It's always been a run-down place. What keeps it going is just central government.
What keeps it going is the people and the character of the people as well. You'll find that in a lot of run-down areas. Sad to hear all of that, but what those people are describing there becomes the norm and they deal with it. If you've got something to say about your area, levelling up, what you need the Levelling Up Secretary to do, as we say, we've got Michael Gove here after 8:30 this morning, put it to him. Say, this is what we need, this is what is important to us in our area.
Let us know. Let's get some analysis, though, first from Downing Street. Our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, is there. Very good morning to you, Tom. Of course, the Labour Party have already come out and said this is new slogans but no new ideas. But what is quite interesting about this is the idea of putting these policies into law so that whoever comes into office, whether it remains the Tories or indeed the Labour Party, has to see it through.
Exactly. This is the central driving mission of this government, and the challenge today really is for the Levelling Up Secretary and indeed the Prime Minister to define what this rather nebulous phrase actually means. Many people have been arguing that levelling up means different things over quite some time, so we're expecting quite a hefty tome in the form of this white paper coming out today. I've heard from one person in government who says they've seen the white paper, and it's a really quite big, thick document with many pages. It'll take a while to sift through, but of course we've already got a bit of flavour in terms of what's in it. Not only more cash for various regions, but also a political structure, devolving more power out of Whitehall and down to local communities. Of course, the United Kingdom is one of the most centralised developed countries in the world, and the regional mayoral system that we've seen growing up over the last decade or so has been a huge success for places like the Tees Valley, for places like London, Manchester and the West Midlands. So extending that model onwards could be a positive thing. Although we are still to see a lot of detail about this white paper, of course, putting it in law, making this an absolute commitment for governments to see through will no doubt be a positive development.
Yeah.
And Tom, just looking at the front pages this morning, there'll be other issues to discuss with Michael Gove. Yesterday we heard the news about the vast quantities of money wasted on PPE contracts, something to the tune of 8.7 billion. You add that together with the loan fraud of 4.3 billion. You talk about 13 billion pounds in waste during the pandemic, which could have been ploughed either into levelling up or avoiding this national insurance price rise.
Yes, this was something that was put to the Prime Minister's spokesman yesterday, of course, a big paper showing exactly where money had gone. The audits of the NHS came out yesterday, which was, they came out on Monday, which was a little bit curious given we know how much, how big a political day Monday was. Some might raise an eyebrow as to whether that was seen to be a good day to bury bad news. But looking at those accounts, yes, there was a huge amount of wastage. What the government is saying, though, and particularly wastage over purchasing of PPE, for example, at the height of the pandemic, what the government says to that, however, is that this was a global issue, a huge shortage, and people were scrabbling around to get what they could. And in the end, 97% of the PPE that was purchased could be used. However, of course, there was wastage there as well. There was PPE purchased that could not be used, and PPE purchased at higher prices than you might expect given the global demand. But yes, there's going to be big questions over accountability, over wastage, over potential fraud in the system. This is something that clearly people are very concerned about because, of course, this is taxpayers' money that is being spent. And as we're seeing coming later this year, taxes are going to have to rise, according to the government, in order to fund greater spending within the NHS. People will rightly raise questions as to what more could be slimmed down or made more efficient within the existing structures, rather than raising taxes on working people.
Tom, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Just looking ahead, how we're going to level up our programme this morning. After 8 o'clock, who have we got?
We've got Hannah Ingram-Moore. She is the daughter, of course, of Captain Sir Tom. It's the first anniversary of his death today. She's in the studio to talk to us about that.
Then at 8:45, as we were saying, and we want your views on this, we're speaking to the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, the Housing and Communities Secretary Michael Gove, about the government's plans there over the next 10 years to be enshrined in law.
Then we've got this guy, Cameron Hutchinson. He's a Hollyoaks bad boy, but he's talking about how he managed to secure his dream job thanks to a wonder drug which helps him with his cystic fibrosis.
That's incredible. Then we've got a doctor in the house, Dr. Amika. He'll be answering your health-related questions, and particularly in the news today, hormone replacement therapy. It's going to be made available over the counter, depending on the outcome of a consultation, which I think is a very good thing, Isabel, that we're more in control of our own health and what we think we need.
Do you have to pay for it if it's over the counter? Not sure. We'll get to the bottom of that with the doctor. And also, we want you to send in any questions you might have for Dr.
I don't think they do
as
have
well.
to pay for it.
No?
I think you get the prescription, and then the prescription is repeated. I think that's the way it goes on that. But basically, if you've got a health worry, a health concern, we're going to be talking about hormone replacement. We're going to be talking about measles and how it is spreading once again, the MMR jab. And we're going to talk about exercise and how you need to do apparently quite intense exercise. So whether it's playing tennis, squash, whether it's running, if you do all of that before your 50s, apparently it staves off aches and pains.
Oh, you're doomed
into
then.
50s, 60s.
I just ordered a skipping rope.
Did you?
Yeah, because I thought, you know what, I've got to get moving. And it's just a quick thing you can do at home. So I thought I'd get home from work, quick skip.
You should watch my wife's Instagram.
Oh, yeah, she's very good.
She's always skipping.
Yeah,
She's skipping and bouncing.
And that's just through happiness and joy.
Just the happiness and joy with all that. But you see, I would look at that survey and say, I was going to use a word I can't use on TV there. It's rubbish. It's rubbish. Because a lot of people you will find who did vigorous exercise when they were young, and I was a cross-country runner, and then they have their joints wear away and they have aches and pains later. How do you tell them that works out? Because it doesn't. So anyway, we're going to be debating all of that. With the time at 11 minutes past 6, viewers, good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Our headlines this hour. Russia has accused the West of deliberately trying to lure it into war with Ukraine. In his first public comments in almost 6 weeks, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said the US was ignoring Moscow's security concerns about NATO forces in Europe.
The Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood has been further arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill. The 20-year-old was first arrested on Sunday on suspicion of rape and assault of a young woman after social media images and videos were posted online.
The chair of the Council of the British Medical Associations reportedly told the BBC that the NHS is riddled with racism. The comments come after a BMA survey found that at least 75% of ethnic minority doctors experienced racism more than once in the past 2 years.
Shoppers have been hit by the highest price rises since 2012.
British Retail Consortium data shows shop inflation almost doubled over the past month, from 0.8% in December to 1.5% in January.
Hormone replacement therapy could become an over-the-counter medicine, as we've just been reporting. The Daily Telegraph says that health watchdogs are set to reclassify HRT so that it can be bought without prescription. A high-profile campaign has already seen the cost of the drug cut by around £200 a year.
And Adele has confirmed she will perform at the Brit Awards. After all, the pop star announced the news on Instagram, denying the rumours that she'd pulled out of the event. It comes after she postponed her Vegas residency at the last minute.
Well,
What do you make of that? Do you think she's bowed to pressure, perhaps?
no.
Because there's lots of criticism.
Well,
that...
she's up for 3 awards at the Brits. Why wouldn't she turn up?
Well, the reason people were saying she wouldn't was because, A, they thought her love life might be on the rocks, according to our Hannah Hope that comes in, that she was perhaps having a bit of a breakdown.
That was a good song.
That was which one?
Love on the rocks. Ain't no surprise.
Is this Elvis again?
Pour me... No, Neil Diamond, isn't it?
I
Pour me a
don't.
drink and I'll tell you some lies. Yesterday's gone. Do you know nothing about music? Do you really? Really? What are you, like Atomic Kitten? Is that?
Yeah, I
right?
love Atomic Kitten. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one. Yeah. I have seen Neil Diamond perform though, but I just
Have
couldn't
you?
sing along. Yeah, he was at Glasgow, wasn't he?
I have no idea. I've
Yeah,
never
well,
been to Glasgow.
do you know nothing about
I've never
music?
been to Glasgow. I thought you were going to Glastonbury. Nor would I ever want to go to
Yeah.
Glastonbury. That would be my idea of hell.
My hubby does keep saying, "Let's go back," and I'm like, I think I'm done. I think I've done
Those
3 or 4.
disgusting loos and mud.
Well, I managed to get into the backstage area.
Did you?
Yeah, well,
But
that's a
even
long
their
story.
loos will be filthy, won't
No,
they?
it was really nice. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, you would be fine.
Hello, I'm Isabel from GBNews.
No,
Can I go to the back? Can the Stars loos? What was different about the Stars loos?
Well, they were flushable. You had running water at the tap.
wonderful.
A full canteen. I mean, it was gorgeous. And a bar. There were all the celebs at the bar. All the action was around the back.
All the action?
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So there we go. Coming up to 6:15. A very good morning to you. After the break, we're going to be looking at recent developments from Ukraine as our Prime Minister tells Vladimir Putin. Why is he not Vladimir Putin? Why would you not just call him Putin to annoy him? Mr. Putin.
Let's do it for the rest of the morning.
But would you see if I was like a diplomat, I would come
You
and
would
say,
not be
I would
capable of
say,
diplomacy,
hello,
Eamonn.
Mr. Putin. How are you today? That
The
would
thing
really
about
annoy him.
diplomacy is you have to walk on eggshells, you have to kowtow. It's not you, Eamonn. It's not
Yeah.
you.
Anyway. So anyway, we're going to be talking about all that. First, here is the weather you've got on this Wednesday morning.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for many, but a cloudy start as well. I'm hopeful that there will be some brighter weather at times in the south, particularly by the afternoon. Whilst further north, the weather front is moving west to east. It's a fairly weak front, but it is bringing thicker cloud to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, along with some outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. That rain and drizzle tending to become persistent in places, particularly over the Pennines, southern uplands, West Highlands and parts of Northern Ireland. So dull and damp across some northern and western parts of the country, but brighter skies developing the Midlands, southern and southeast England, parts of eastern Scotland at times as well. Shetland in the far north seeing a few more showers and staying cold here, whilst it's much milder elsewhere, double figures widely across the country. Feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine, where we get some of that in central and southern England. Into the evening then, and thicker cloud once again spreads across the vast majority of the country, and with winds coming from a mild direction, well, temperatures aren't going to drop particularly, and even in Shetland they'll stay above freezing. So a frost-free start for virtually all of us on Thursday morning. A cloudy start though, with those outbreaks of rain continuing for parts of Scotland. Heavy at times in the west, particularly over the Highlands. And it really turns more showery as we head through the morning tomorrow, with some heavy bursts at times. But for many, it's looking like a dry afternoon initially. Some sunshine there for central and eastern England before heavier rain moves into the far northwest as we end the day. This is an active weather front, and it's going to clear southeastwards by Thursday night, and into Friday it will turn the temperatures down, but it will introduce brighter skies and blustery showers for Friday itself. So a mixture of sunny spells and showers on Friday, feeling colder in the wind.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
This whole levelling up situation, we got Michael Gove on at 8:45 this morning. Deborah says, look, levelling up, we're asking for your views on this. And Deborah says, don't make me laugh. As always, from politicians, it's all talk, no action. But he's got 12 commandments on this.
He does, yeah, and he wants them in law.
Yeah. The only way, Deborah says, we will level up is to stop the toffs, the sirs, and the millionaires running the government.
Well, is that going to happen? Here's Anne. She says, everything in our country started declining in some areas when all the production was moved to China. Some areas in the north had a proud history of employment, leading to spending equaling investment in shops, buildings and hospitality. Fair point.
It's hard to argue against that, so it is. And that is a picture, that is a story that would have happened all over the country. So it would have had. Vladimir Putin has accused the United States of forcing his country into war as tensions along the Ukrainian border continue to grow.
This comes after Prime Minister Boris Johnson left Ukraine following his warning to Russia that the country will face a package of sanctions at the first sign of an invasion. Our GB News Homes and Security editor, Mark White, has the story.
At key locations along the Ukrainian border, Russian forces continue to mass. Despite international alarm, Moscow says it has no intention of invading its neighbour. But nor does it say when these large-scale military exercises will end. The manoeuvres have sparked intense diplomatic efforts to ease the tensions with Russia, which Western governments fear will end in conflict. But in a clear warning to Moscow, the British Prime Minister flew into the Ukrainian capital to emphasise the UK's support for Kiev.
Today, I've announced a further £88 million of UK funding to support good governance and energy independence in Ukraine. Alongside other countries, we are also preparing a package of sanctions and other measures to be enacted the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukrainian territory.
As well as tens of millions of pounds in additional aid, the UK has stepped up support for the Ukrainian military, with new missile systems and dozens of British personnel training the Ukrainians in their use. In eastern Ukraine, this soldier, a gas drilling specialist in civilian life, has spent 7 years fighting Russian separatists here. He says his comrades are ready to defend their homeland, and any large-scale move by Moscow will cost them dearly.
If they start a military operation here, it will be like Stalingrad for them. We will ensure they're bogged down right across Ukraine.
Ukrainian concerns over Russian aggression are understandable. In 2014, Russian forces entered Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, annexing that region, which is now mostly under Moscow's control. And for years now, in parts of eastern Ukraine, thousands have died as Russian-backed separatists continue to mount a protracted insurgency against Ukrainian forces. Since late last year, there has been a steady build-up of Russian forces along its Ukrainian border, now believed to be in the region of 110,000. A further 30,000 Russian troops are massing on the Belarusian-Ukrainian border to take part in a huge military exercise there. The US and the UK are among the nations planning to help bolster the defences of their allies in the region, like here in Estonia, where American and Belgian jets have been patrolling the airspace here. While over in the Black Sea, Russian naval assets are also massing. These are exercises for now, but manoeuvres with menace. And although the diplomacy continues apace, with brinkmanship, bloodshed is only ever a misstep away. Mark White, GB News.
Well, for more on this, let's go to Moscow Times journalist Jake Cordell on this. Jake, a very good morning to you. Jake, has there been a response from Washington on what's going on, and what are you getting on the ground, the feeling as to how tensions are rising or moving?
Well, we saw from those pictures that tensions really are quite high. You can see the sheer firepower that Russia has amassed around Ukraine, really from three sides. It's got really significant military forces. And this has been the case for a few months now. And there's a feeling that we must be getting close to something. Something has got to give soon. We can't go on with this standoff forever. Now, the US has said there is no way it's going to give in to Russia's demands. Russia is demanding that NATO and the US issue a legal guarantee that Ukraine never joins NATO. The US for months has said that's a non-starter, that Ukraine gets to pick who it's allied with. Vladimir Putin yesterday made his first public comments on this standoff in a month, another sign that this may be heading towards some kind of resolution or next step. He pushed back against the US, said the US is completely rejecting Russia's legitimate demands in his eyes. So we're really, on the diplomatic front, we haven't really moved anywhere in 2 months. And meanwhile, we see this very, very high-profile troop buildup in and around Ukraine. And it's getting very, very nervous for politicians in Kiev and also in Europe and Washington.
Yeah, I know you say we haven't moved anywhere in 2 months, but there is a slight change, isn't there, in that President Macron is becoming more prominent in talks. Vladimir Putin seems to think, yeah, I could do business with you. I'll talk to this guy. Will not bother talking to America or Britain. And the EU also being more accessible to him.
Yeah, the EU has pushed forward. It's trying to push forward its own, what it calls its kind of anomalous security approach. It wants to be a big player on this stage. And Macron has had phone calls with Vladimir Putin, and he's hosted summits with Ukrainian officials. And he's got some statements saying that neither side want war, which is all fine. The same with Boris Johnson's visit to Ukraine yesterday in a very public show of force for Ukraine. Europe has been very, very big in supporting Ukraine. And we saw yesterday a package, more than €1 billion of financial aid was passed to Ukraine. But the feeling here in Moscow, maybe the understanding here in Moscow, is there is only one world leader that really matters when it comes to this. Joe Biden on the other side, and then, of course, Vladimir Putin here. So for all the diplomacy going on in Europe, Moscow really sees itself as above the European Union. It sees itself as above Britain. It's a bigger world player, and it sees itself on a par with Washington, maybe China. And so there's only really one person that Putin is willing to talk to on this.
Just tell us how this is being covered in Moscow. I mean, you talk about the importance of Biden from the Russian perspective, and is he a laughingstock over in Russia, given, sort of Sleepy Joe kind of look that he's portraying? And the same question regarding Boris Johnson. We saw Zelensky's team yesterday joking that they hadn't been confronted with a cake or ambushed with a cake. I mean, is that cutting through over in Russia, all this domestic strife for Boris Johnson?
Well, it certainly hasn't gone unnoticed here in Moscow that, of course, Boris Johnson had to cancel a planned phone call with Vladimir Putin because he was in Parliament responding to the Sue Gray report. That's certainly been noticed, and the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, his spokespeople were in no rush to rearrange that call. Even yesterday, when Boris Johnson's team was saying, yes, we've got it in the diary, he's going to speak to Putin as soon as possible, the music from Moscow was like, well, we'll wait and see. We haven't arranged anything yet. So there is an understanding here in Moscow that some domestic concerns are playing into this. The same with Emmanuel Macron, who's going to be running for re-election soon. So there is a feeling that there is a bit of playing to the domestic audience here in Moscow. In terms of the mood on the ground, it's a lot calmer here in Moscow than it is in other capitals. And the same in Kiev. I think we've seen the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky try to play down this fear because he doesn't want to scare his people. And in Moscow here, you have to remember these two countries have been at war already for 8 years. So there is a sense of, well, what's different this time around here in Moscow? And they're kind of going through the motions. Whether or not that turns out to be the case, of course, nobody really knows, perhaps except Vladimir Putin.
So, Jake, it is fascinating talking to you there, and you're talking about there on the ground. We talk about governmental level, and then you talk about there on the ground and the fact that these two countries have been at war for 8 years. So it's very much something, the tension is what they're used to. Let me ask you this. I mean, going out and about, going to the pubs or the restaurants or whatever, do people care? Do they care? You know, on the ground in Moscow, does the average Moscovite care about this?
Yeah, I think people do care. It would be wrong to confuse the fact that this maybe isn't a high tension or high risk of fear with the fact that people care. This is a topic which everyone is talking about. And you have to remember that the ties between Russia and Ukraine are very strong. Lots of families have relatives or at the very least friends who live in Ukraine, and vice versa for families living in Ukraine. So people will almost certainly have some kind of personal stake in this. However, there is this understanding that, well, not an understanding, perhaps there is this cynicism among people that this is a political game. They're firing words at each other, but very few bullets may follow those words, and that they've lived in an authoritarian system. They kind of understand that, as to some extent, they just have to go with the flow, and there's nothing they can really do, the people here in Moscow, to influence the situation and to influence what Vladimir Putin is doing. So there certainly is an awareness of this topic, and it's being talked about on the streets, it's being talked about in the TV studios as well. But there isn't a kind of fear or imminent or concern that war will be imminent here. Again, we don't know whether that's misplaced or whether it's a complacency that's built in over the past 8 years or what it is to do with, but certainly not as fraught as you might expect.
And just really quickly, Jake, we're almost out of time, but is this also helping to boost the popularity of Putin, which some commentators have suggested was ailing following the pandemic, that sometimes something like this sort of show of strength really pleases the Russian people?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. His support has been flagging, but then again, Russia has been in this standoff with the West for so long that it's really hard to see whether this latest thing changes anything significantly. As I said, Russians have been dealing with this for many years. I'm not sure this really moves the dial in terms of Putin presenting himself as a ferocious leader that the world fears.
OK, Jake, really fascinating talking to you. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. Come talk to us again. Thank you very much.
Stay with us. After the break, we're looking at the papers, and following that, we'll be talking about electric cars. See you shortly.
Yeah. Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GBNews.
Well, here come the papers, and we're delighted to be in the company today of Claire Muldoon and former Conservative Minister, Mr. David Miller. Very nice to see you both. Good having you here. Look, I want to talk first of all about levelling up. This is what's on the agenda today. Michael Gove is doing the rounds. And Claire, would you be aware of levelling up? You know, being from Glasgow and whatever.
Well, Glasgow and Scotland are one of the biggest devolved countries, I think, in the UK, and this is what this levelling up is entitled many boroughs in England to do. They were called Boris boroughs, and now with Michael Gove coming on, as you said, he'll be able to explain in a bit more terms. So what's happening is there's 12 key factors and 12 points that they want to level up in Britain to give it some parity. In my view, I think they should start by scrapping HS2 and actually making the place more infrastructure-led and easier to actually get around than starting on 12-point nonsense.
Why do you want a Victorian rail network when you could have something that's like Japan?
Because it won't work.
Of course it'll work. You get to Manchester in an hour?
No, but the time, that's what your vested interest only clearly in that, Mr. Holmes, is Man United. Let's bring it back a bit. By the time these trains will be up and running, they'll be out of date.
Nah, I don't agree with you. I just think there's no moving on. You have to move on. You have to evolve. You've got to get involved in science and whatever. But the point is, David, you know, obviously I'm from Belfast, Claire's from Glasgow, and we used to think in Belfast...
I thought you were from East London.
But the thing is, you know, you're from somewhere like Glasgow or Belfast, you might have a bit of a chip on your shoulder that you think, we're not given the same benefits as other people and whatever. And then, Claire, I'd go around other parts of England, and I'll not name towns, and I'll think, they're anonymous, they're absolutely anonymous, and they're left to die.
They're soulless. They're completely anonymous.
And I feel really, really sorry, and I realise that there's a vibrancy in Belfast and Glasgow that there is not in other places.
No, I see that. I mean, I was brought up in Dorset, lovely county in terms of, you know, beaches.
Yes, but
one always felt sort of out of it in terms of the dynamic that was going on elsewhere in the country. And interestingly, levelling up is not a new idea. You know, when I first got interested in politics, I'm sorry to tell you, back in the early 60s, Lord Hailsham, of all people, was sent to the northeast to try to do something about that under Harold Macmillan. And by the same token, one of the things where levelling up worked under Margaret Thatcher was a lot of fine new hospitals were built out of London, whereas when I was a kid, the only thing you could do for someone who was quite seriously ill was buy them a ticket to go to London.
Yeah.
So levelling up should be a process that's ongoing. The worry with levelling up, even though probably, although curious in many ways, the most effective minister of the lot of them is Michael Gove, because he does know how to get things done. The worry is this levelling up is a slogan. You know, Boris is a man who's into slogans. He doesn't get past the first supplementary question when it comes to the detail. The test for Michael Gove is, can he give any detail that makes this thing seem to be something of substance, rather than Boris just wriggling away and trying to find something
he's here
to
to
say.
8:45 this morning, and we're gonna try and put that to him. Do you think this will work? Do you think broadly you're in favour of it?
I am hugely in favour of it. Anything that it makes a bit of parity across the country in terms of health, education and priority needs has to be a good thing.
You know, David was saying there about hospitals in the northeast, and when you realise the ripple effect of all of that, you give people it's not only healthcare, improved healthcare and longevity you're giving them, but you're giving them jobs. They have money then to spend
pride.
on the economy.
You see, Newcastle is one of the finest medical centres in the country. Wasn't always so.
One of the best universities to study medicine now
too.
Yeah. Well, very good. David, we go to The Guardian. This is the front page on page 7. The Ukrainian situation.
Well, I mean, look, the Ukrainian situation is very serious. You know,
is it very serious?
Oh, yes, I think so. Yeah. Because the amount of of hardware they put on the border. Why are they doing that? And Putin is a liar, we know this. And so I personally think the chances of Ukraine being invaded in some shape or form are very considerable. And the inability of the West
to respond
I mean, look at the new German Chancellor. He sends them 5,000 helmets. The Germans, and you look at German history of the last 100 years, are like a bad golfer. They're in the lake on the right-hand side of the fairway when they start invading everybody else. Now they're in the clubhouse mixing up with the gin and tonics balls when they have not even got the guts to tell Putin it's too much. Why? Because they're bought and paid for by
the
Putin.
gas.
Over the gas.
The pipeline.
Yeah.
Who has got the guts to tell Putin then where to go and to stop playing cat and mouse?
Nature abhors a vacuum. We have a very elderly American president. He wasn't up to much when 20 years ago he consistently failed to get the Democratic nomination, once because he stole a speech off Kinnock. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
Yes, he did. He stole a speech off Neil Kinnock, and that humiliated him. I look at him and I think, I'd love you to be good, Joe, but you just think, is the light on?
Is there any sort of plan there for a succession with Kamala Harris?
I think she's been... Look, she was a prosecutor. She seems a strong-willed woman. I'm all for A, women, and B, women of colour in America, which has a shameful record in terms of promoting women of colour. But I don't think, again, in a different way, she's got intellectual vibrancy, but what she doesn't have is real leadership quality, and it's not without significance. That huge field, often of people who are, wouldn't even win a selling plate at Fakenham, who are there as contenders, but they were the ones she was the one who was dropped out first.
So what you're describing to me is the perfect storm for the re-emergence of Donald Trump.
I hope not.
Okay. Claire, the ongoing energy crisis, and I saw a report last night on the news, and it was north of Inverness, and it was talking about fuel poverty. And of course, no need to spell out, it's colder north of Inverness than anywhere else. And it was heartbreaking to watch what families were going through, and they couldn't turn on their radiators and things.
This has been rumbling on for months now, and apparently on the 7th of February, the government are going to release a relief package for people who are living in fuel poverty. But more...
So what, you get a loan of 200 quid?
Who knows?
And then you have to spend...
Who knows what's going to happen?
Why don't you just give people a grant of 200 quid?
Why not? Or why not make... I think it's down to the energy companies, and I think it's ridiculous when they were privatised that there was no control of anything. And now we've got the gas being supplied to the highest bidder in the whole of Europe, etc., etc. Putin holding the energy crutch, right? And he wants the pipe round through Poland, through Eastern Europe, and into Europe to sell. It's ridiculous.
So you'd be in favour of a windfall tax or something on these energy companies, would you?
Absolutely, and I think we should get rid of the green tax as well on the payments for households.
But that's not going to happen, is it?
Well, he's got to tell Carrie over the breakfast table, listen, babe, just get out of my life. Be a domestic person and have all your friends and have your intellectual arguments with your friends, but don't tell me how to run the country. But I tell you, I take an interest. I'm a bit of a housewife on the quiet. I quite like it, actually. I do the shopping, I do all of that.
Do you want to do swimming in the day?
I don't know, but, I'm sort of... but during lockdown, I thought, I'm not going to be going to the Costa Packet in a long time, so we bought a cottage in Dorset.
Right.
You sometimes have me on from my cottage. I looked at the electricity bill from the 4th of January to the 24th, 600 quid for a small cottage
for 1 month.
Dorset. For under a month. OK, we must be the only people in the world who still have night storage heating, because that's what we inherited. But I'm thinking to myself, how the hell can normal families afford that? It's a shocker.
Yeah, and the fact you talk about the storage, the electricity and whatever, there's some parts of the country that can only have electricity, they can't have gas or anything else.
Well, we can't have gas.
But I'm just saying, politically, nobody's going to renegotiate the COP agreement. They're not going to come in and say, all of that a month ago was a bit of a bad idea, let's forget it. That's the trouble, isn't it?
Of course. But the idea that when we are responsible for less than 1% of energy use in the world, we have to pin huge extra costs on being virtuous when we know full well that places like Russia, places like China, it's very sad. But those people are not going to make the changes that are necessary. Why should we impale ourselves on a hook that means a lot of people are either going to go be freezing cold or bankrupted?
Well, look, guys, you're listening to this at home at GB News. Tweet us. You're probably deciding today whether to turn on the heat or a harder heat, whether you're doing it with the gas rings in the kitchen, whether you're doing it with a fire, whether you're doing it with electric radiators or whatever. And do you have to think twice about what you are doing, just staying under the duvet today and watching us from there? Claire, this is the front page of the Mail, and this is the headline screams out, what a £13 billion waste. Now, this is PPE we're talking about?
PPE that's gone out of date, PPE that wasn't fit for purpose, and PPE that just wasn't even opened, right?
Yeah.
The Treasury have spent this amount of money. OK, we needed it. It was emergency. It was, what were we living in? A pandemic. So we had to get something up and running, which they did. Fine. However, we've got Michelle Moan, who put through her company that she was attached to, MedPro. They got a huge, big order through for PPE. That's kind of buried under the newspapers. And now we're faced with an £8.7 billion deficit that's going to be written off by the Treasury.
Not reclaimed.
Not reclaimed, written off. And Rishi Sunak and his Treasury are trying to go after people who involuntarily, illegally got money from the furlough cash scheme. So we've got that cash imbalance. It's just not adding up. People are trying to live their lives. They can't afford their heating. They can't afford grocery bills. It's just
and at this stage, I'd like to mention the many, many thousands of people who are being persecuted for the historic loan charge and historic taxes through IR35 as well. Are being victimised for this.
And I got to tell you something. I am always wary of using the word corruption, but I think there's a lot of corruption in the way people have obtained these grants, and in particular on these PPE acquisition. As the late Max Brygger said, I'll tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story. An senior American businessman rang me up at the beginning of the pandemic and said, would I give him an introduction to Matt Hancock because he had companies that could produce this stuff? And I said, I'm not going to, because the last person on earth you want to introduce you to a minister is an ex-politician. It means you go to the bottom of the queue. And I think that's the way it used to be. I then a few months later read that if you had a political backing, you went into a special category. And even Matt Hancock's landlord got some contract or other for doing that. And I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute. Things have changed. And do you know what? I know I sound like an old fart now, because, one's always in danger of saying things have changed and it's so much worse than what it used to be. But I tell you something, you could never, ever, as a politician, influence procurement to the benefit of yourself and any of your friends. And now you can.
Because they've got the VIP route.
And these awful people in the House of Lords, a lot of whom, you could go on a tube train and choose a random 50 people. They do a better job than a lot of these people that are put in there. And I just think at a certain point, there will have to be there'll have to be a proper investigation into all of this. And I don't fancy being in the shoes of one or two people, no names, no pack drill, who presided over this shambles.
The way you said things have changed there, as a cabinet minister yourself, being inside Downing Street, has the culture changed? I mean, we're talking all this Partygate business, it doesn't go away. There must have been a change of culture than you remember in Margaret Thatcher's day, for instance.
Now, Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister for 11 years. I was a minor cog in her wheel. I was a minister in the government for 9 years. If I'd wandered into number 10 on a sunny day, taken out my cheap bottle of Mongolian Rioja, opened it up and had a swig or two, she would have killed me. Because, dear Margaret, she treated me with even more contempt than my mother ever did. And that is saying something. And when I look at this, I'm not going to swear, this shambles, with all these people sitting around, swigging away. They haven't even got the discrimination to choose decent wine, swigging away at cheap wine. And Boris sitting there in the middle with Carrie, it's like it's a lovely party. Well, they are telling people that they cannot go and be with dying relatives and all that. I mean, I get angry about this. And the public are angry about this. Let's be quite clear. The public are very angry.
There's a lot of people, though, who are not angry. and they get in touch with us. And these are people who you think, can you not see the wrong? I mean, a blind man on a galloping horse can see the wrong, but they don't want criticism of Boris Johnson. They call it Boris bashing, and for me speaking like this, I've got a lot of flack now for just stating the obvious and stating the news. But I started off by asking you a change of culture. Without, blaming him or not, there has been a change of culture.
Well, there has been a change of culture adversely, and the question is, can there ever be a change of culture back? There's a nice photo on the front of one of the more vibrant young civil service leaders, Anteo Romeo, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Justice, who was being lined up to be permanent secretary of the Prime Minister's Department. Because no doubt, one thing that's changed at Number 10, it used to be just the Prime Minister's office, and now it's like a small Department of State. And what she is saying is, A, she won't do it, and she's also it's pointed out, Mr. Johnson, I'm quoting from the Telegraph now, has not named a single individual who will be leaving his inner circle, despite Mrs. Gray, senior civil servant, concluding there were failures of leadership and judgment. Look, asking someone to change their whole fundamental personality, and Boris's fundamental personality is to be a shambles, right? And he is not going to change. And that is why, whatever people say, it's like running a 10,000-metre race, and every 50 yards you take your pulse. Boris is coming through it. But Boris can never come through it because Boris cannot change. And littered behind him, there was to adapt a famous bon mot many years ago, there isn't just a skeleton in the cupboard at Number 10. They're hanging like candelabra in every room, and that's going to be the problem.
Folks, what do you think? Not sure, want to know what you think. I know what you think. At GB News, get in touch. David Miller, thank you very much indeed. David and Claire will be back in an hour's time, and again at about 8:45 as well. Isabel.
At the time, exactly 7:10, we're to Teesside now, where tens of thousands of dead crabs and lobsters have been washing up on beaches for 3 months. The cause of the deaths remains unknown despite an ongoing investigation. Our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney has been looking into it.
Locals described the scenes back in October as apocalyptic. Tens of thousands of dead crabs and lobsters washing up on beaches around Teesside. Large fish have also been found dead along the coastline. The Environment Agency and science advisors CFAS have been working to find the cause, but it remains unknown, and DEFRA has now taken control of the investigation. There have also been reports of dead seals too, and some pet owners say their dogs have taken ill after walks on the beach. But DEFRA says there is no evidence to link either of these incidents to the current investigation.
The cause of the deaths remain a mystery. The Environment Agency has ruled out chemical pollution, and investigators have also ruled out sewage, dredging and undersea cabling.
Redcar Beach would usually be busy with visitors. The few who are continuing to use the beach are still spotting dead crabs. Businesses are affected because fishermen are affected, and that has an impact on supply. There is also much lower footfall in the area, and the unsightly scenes don't have locals rushing to order seafood.
When they're seeing, crabs that they're put off by eating shellfish and eating seafood. But I think for me as a chef, the demand is still there. The supply is going down, and that obviously puts the price up for catering and chefs in particular. When buying fish, I think you still can do it. There's fantastic fishmongers out there, especially in the northeast. So please do have faith in your fishmonger.
20 minutes down the road is picturesque Saltburn by the Sea. Visitor numbers there are starting to pick back up, but fishermen are still struggling and waiting for answers.
I think the longer this goes on, the more serious it is. I mean, January is not a high catching period normally, but if this was to go on, obviously the impacts are cumulative. But I think this is very much something that we need to address as a matter of urgency. We've raised questions in Parliament to make sure that there's the political attention to find the solution, and the resources are put into finding that solution.
As DEFRA's investigations continue, local people, fishermen and businesses are eager to know the cause to find a solution. Rachel Sweeney, GB News.
Well, Rich, and I find that absolutely shocking, absolutely terrible that marine life, would have been devastated in such a way. And, you wonder sometimes, is this sonar from submarines? Is this testing underwater pipes that have been
It's
laid
got to be just
down?
all the rubbish we're pumping into the sea, isn't it, from the rivers?
Just awful. And you can't ignore it. I mean, it's as if just because it's under the water, it's still there. It's still there, and it affects our whole
Well, yeah,
biosystem.
fishing industry, and exactly, the birds feeding on the fish and everything.
You're right about these water companies that pump all that sewage in and whatever. Who knows? But it's amazing. Rachel, bringing us that story from Teesside there. If you've got anything to add to it, you know what to do. Just get in touch with us. But I think that's absolutely horrendous. Has any emails flooded in?
Loads on levelling up, but I just want to read this one about Putin, which was your suggestion.
Yes, Mr. Putin.
That's the best laugh I've had in ages, Eamonn. Thank you so much. Vladimir Putin with the big laughing emoji. You're right. Why don't we call him that? We love GB News. So refreshing. Keep smiling, Eamonn and Isabel. That's from Annie on the Isle of Wight.
That is my point. I mean, do you know what they say? If you want to, if someone bullies you or you're
Call them
intimidated by
out,
someone,
yeah.
and they say, just imagine them with no clothes on, for instance, or something like that. Well, he loves going about with his chest and his man boobs and all that.
He
his
does.
moves.
So you've got to humiliate him.
And doing all that he does riding a horse.
Yeah.
Can you imagine me on that horse?
Well, this person can. Frankie Baby has emailed saying, looking well this morning, Eamonn, and gorgeous Isabel on the breakfast show. Frankie in knots. So thank you. Very nice. But some serious ones as well on levelling up. Brian.
Why do you have to get serious? Why do you?
Well, you want to...
We're sitting there going to discuss...
Got another minute to talk, and I thought...
Vlad Putin. There could be a song
Go
like
on,
that.
then.
Vlad Putin.
Here we go.
Vlad Putin, Vlad Putin.
45 seconds to go,
It sounds like a food, doesn't it?
I don't know what it
What are you having
sounds
for lunch today? I'm having some of that Vlad Putin. Bit of Vlad Putin on toast.
What did you have on your toast this morning? A serious question.
No, listen, it's a serious point. I do think you give these people position.
Yeah.
Don't give them position.
Yeah.
Mr. Putin. Putin, my name is Putin. You sound Mr. Putin. Putin, sorry.
Look, we have the honour, don't we, of talking to a lot of very senior people, whether they be supreme leaders of NATO, whatever it might be. Let's put that suggestion to them.
Putin.
Just undermine them with a sort of mockery of their name. It could be a diplomatic technique, or indeed could trigger the next World War.
We treat too many people with too much respect. There are too many Egypts out there running not only the world, but, businesses. Your boss. You probably think of your boss at work.
Oh.
And they're probably an Egypt as well.
Not me, I don't think that.
Most management are Egypts, aren't they?
I'm not commenting. This is very dodgy territory.
People often
I
lose
think
their
my
soul.
manager
they
is
often
brilliant.
lose their soul when they become management.
Maybe, yeah.
But it's the world we're into. HR, that's another thing. What's that about?
You are on dangerous ground here.
What's that about? What's that about? Everybody's got a gripe. I'm not feeling well today. Oh, will you take a week off? Take a week off? I've got one of them shouting in my ear right now.
Not saying a word.
Anyway, the time is 6:56. You're watching and listening to GB News at Breakfast.
Coming up, we've got lots more for you. See you in a moment, but first, here's the forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for many, but a cloudy start as well. I'm hopeful that there will be some brighter weather at times in the south, particularly by the afternoon. Whilst further north, the weather front is moving west to east. It's a fairly weak front, but it is bringing thicker cloud to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, along with some outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. That rain and drizzle tending to become persistent in places, particularly over the Pennines, Southern Uplands, West Highlands and parts of Northern Ireland. So dull and damp across some northern and western parts of the country, but brighter skies developing the Midlands, southern and southeast England, parts of eastern Scotland at times as well. Shetland in the far north seeing a few more showers and staying cold here, whilst it's much milder elsewhere, double figures widely across the country. Feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine, where we get some of that in central and southern England. Into the evening then, and thicker cloud once again spreads across the vast majority of the country, and with winds coming from a mild direction, well, temperatures aren't going to drop particularly, and even in Shetland they'll stay above freezing. So a frost-free start for virtually all of us on Thursday morning. A cloudy start though, with those outbreaks of rain continuing for parts of Scotland. Heavy at times in the west, particularly over the Highlands. And it really turns more showery as we head through the morning tomorrow, with some heavy bursts at times. But for many, it's looking like a dry afternoon initially. Some sunshine there for central and eastern England before heavier rain moves into the far northwest as we end the day. This is an active weather front, and it's going to clear southeastwards by Thursday night, and into Friday it will turn the temperatures down, but it will introduce brighter skies and blustery showers for Friday itself. So a mixture of sunny spells and showers on Friday, feeling colder in the wind.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Devolution revolution. The government finally unveils its plan to level up the UK.
Good morning. It's 7:01 on Wednesday, February the 2nd. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Coming up, the government has set out wide-ranging plans to improve life in parts of the UK, including more power to the regions. But Labour says the plans don't go far enough. What do you think? You can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
The Prime Minister will announce state-backed loans to help people cope with rising energy prices. We're asking, will this solve our cost of living crisis?
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson's getting tough on the world stage. He warns Russia that Britain will hit Moscow with sanctions the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukraine territory. We'll bring you the latest.
So it is Levelling Up Day. We're talking about it all morning this morning. Lots of you emailing in with your views. You want to start, Eamonn?
Yeah, Karen says, stop building multiple housing estates with no extra schools, no extra dentists, doctors, bus provision, parking. Absolutely right. We are overpopulated and zero police, so the crime goes up. That's Karen's feeling. Do you agree with her?
Bert's got in touch. He says, I would stop squeezing the working middle for tax and make footballers and entertainers pay their proper share. Then I would even up the more than generous state-funded pension to all those that pay for them.
Well, we're not saying footballers don't make their proper share, but there's no doubt. You see, I would go for these digital companies and things. I mean, every time somebody, texting and social media and all that, I'd put a penny on every time someone does that.
Especially if they're mean.
They wouldn't even miss it. They wouldn't even miss it. And then that could pay for so many things.
Okay.
Herp says, start levelling up with the real north. And he says that is even further north than Manchester, and then you work down. And that's a very good point, because I think you forget, we talk about Manchester, for instance, then you forget about everything between Manchester and Glasgow. And, you know, you've got to remember that, you know, the Carlisles of this world, Blackburns of this world, whatever.
This is an interesting idea from Jamie. He's trying to attract investment into parts of the country which are sort of struggling. He says, create free zones with 0% corporation tax and invite large European companies to relocate and employ the local population.
Yeah, these are like these enterprise zones that used to be. I'm not sure if they still exist or not, but you know, there's no doubt. It's sad to see. It shouldn't be that way. It is a terrible inequality, and it happens not just economically. It can happen with social care. It happens with medical care, whatever, in so many ways.
And the other knock-on, I suppose, for us Londoners who are stuck living here is that a lot of people then drain out of these areas to come. I'm stuck here. Yes,
Where do you want to be?
Oh gosh, I'd love to be in the countryside in my wellies. Of course I would, but I'm stuck working in London. I love my job. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, all these places decline. The young all flock to the capital, and then we have all the problems here with infrastructure overcrowding. Nobody has any gardens, tiny houses, all of that jazz.
Well, you know. One of the things, I'm so lucky that, you know, I've been around so much of the country and I've seen so much of the country, and a lot of that's due to football as well. One place I know well is Wolverhampton, and it's one of the cities set to benefit from this programme that we're talking about.
Yes, and our West Midlands reporter, Balvinder Sidhu, is there for us this morning. I suppose, then, Wolverhampton will be pleased to hear the details of this levelling up agenda.
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. People here are keen to see and hear more about what Housing Secretary Michael Gove has planned for the city. And of course, they're desperate for money. I mean, I've been speaking to people who've been living here for many years, and lots of people, they don't actually know what levelling up means. If you go to people on the street and say, what is levelling up? But when you ask them about, you know, what makes Wolverhampton an attractive place to live, what would make you want to stay, work here and live here, and then they have a lot to say, and this is what they said to me when I spoke to them earlier.
Tension kind of hit this place, and we never really got out of it, as you can see evidently by the high street. I think there's been a lot of migration from across the country and immigration as well, but it's been a lot of poor people, and there's been no affluence, and there's been no money, not particularly skilled people. I used to work in recruitment for a number of years, and Wolverhampton's notorious for being a black spot in terms of skilled.
It's like a third world country at the moment, yeah. But no one's got any money, and all the shops are closing, you know, it's a ghost town. So he's been here quite a few times, Boris, so he knows exactly what it is like.
It's not a lot of shops for young people, and there's actually quite a lot of young population in Wolverhampton. You know, you got football fans coming in all the time, like, you know, they might want to go shopping. People go to the university. They've actually all travelled. Many of them are from Birmingham or London. Like, you know, none of them even wants to stay in Wolverhampton. They want to go straight back. They don't even want to, like, bother staying here. Housing here is not good at all. You do have to wait quite, like, even in the private market, or say if you want to go the government, still it's very hard to find, and especially with the prices nowadays as well, especially when you don't actually have a job, then it just makes everything much harder.
You know, the thing I find with Wolverhampton, any approach from out of the area into Wolverhampton is not aesthetically pleasing. It needs attraction, you know, some colour, some modernity.
In outlying areas, improve the housing estates, encourage house building, property development and so forth, and encourage younger generation to come to Wolverhampton. There's got to be some attraction for them to come to Wolverhampton.
It's a run-down place. It's always been a run-down place. What keeps it going is just central government.
Well, as you just heard there, lots of people mentioned housing, and that is one of the areas that the government are planning to invest in here in Wolverhampton and Sheffield. They want to redevelop brownfield sites and build new housing with access to leisure facilities and make it very green and attractive so that more people choose to live and stay and work in this city. But this white paper, is long in the development. We'll hear more details later, but 34 areas are expected to be announced, and they cut across quite a range of issues, from bridging the gap between health inequalities, education inequalities, ensuring that children achieve their literacy and numeracy levels when they leave primary school, greater connectivity, better broadband in towns and cities across the country, and access to public transport, jobs, helping people get better skilled. We heard Nadeem Zahawi announce selective sixth forms yesterday in 55 areas, including Walsall, which is just down the road. And this is for disadvantaged children who are particularly bright to access a very good education so that they can go on to do well in life and maybe get places in university. However, this is, a really difficult, this is a long list of ambition. There's 12 missions. The government have given themselves until 2030 to achieve them. That's 8 years. That's also 2 general elections away. I mean, how much of that they're going to achieve remains to be seen. Some of that money is going to be made available immediately. The rest of it we don't know yet. We'll be hearing more details from Michael Gove later. But this is a key part of the government's manifesto. When Boris was elected, he promised to get Brexit done, and he also promised to level up the country.
Thanks, Balvinder. Thanks to you being in Wolverhampton today, hearing from people as well. It's real, it's important to them. Michael Gove, 8:45, Balvinder, today, so hopefully we'll hear from you again closer to that time. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, time to cross the Downing Street. We can speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who joins us from there. Tom, obviously, this is the big day then, levelling up. It's been, as Balvinder was saying, his kind of defining mission for some time, although lots of people haven't really known quite how to define it. But, of course, it's also PMQs today. Will the Prime Minister be back from the Ukraine in time for that?
Yes, the Prime Minister will be taking questions from the dispatch box at midday today. We'll be able to watch it live on GBNews as usual. And of course, it's a big day for him, trying to move the conversation on from the scandals and the sleaze and the stories of the last 3 weeks and talk about the substantive issues that the Prime Minister believes people want to hear about, both at home and abroad. Of course, the Prime Minister was speaking to the President Zelensky of Ukraine yesterday, talking to a fearful country, really, a country with 100,000 Russian troops on its border, and indeed offering that strong support that the UK has been offering for several months now. It's interesting, actually, that the Ukrainian Parliament held up flags of countries they thought were helping them, and the United Kingdom flag was right there, front and centre, a proud moment, no doubt. But talking back domestically, this levelling up white paper is such an important and crucial and pivotal moment for Boris Johnson's premiership, because, of course, Brexit got done. And then there's been a bit of stasis in government from many angles, people not knowing what the mission of this government is, the nebulous words levelling up that many people have different definitions for and few people can define. Well, this levelling up white paper will be the mission of this government, and seeing exactly what levelling up means in practice, how the government proposes to make a more equal country, to unleash the potential of left behind areas of this country, will be fascinating to see. We do know some of the detail. We know particularly the idea of devolving more power, this successful regional mayor model that we've seen work in places like the Tees Valley, Manchester, London, the West Midlands, having that opportunity to the whole country, but also more powers for those mayors to fight for their regions and their areas. That will be a crucial part of the whole mix.
Tom, appreciate it. Thanks. We'll speak later. Thanks, everybody who's tuning in for the first time on radio and on television. We really appreciate it. We see the figures and the charts and the graphs. And
the lovely emails.
Are they lovely today?
They are some really lovely ones today, yeah. They've enjoyed your Northern Irish turn of phrase, like a blind man and a galloping horse, or an Egypt, or whatever it might be, putting.
Anyway,
enough about me.
We're going to be here right through to 9:30. I just wanted to welcome you on board. Thank you for watching. And if you're tuned in an hour from now, this is what we've got.
Lots coming this morning. Hannah Ingram Moore is joining us in the studio, taking a look back at her father's life. Of course, he was Captain Sir Tom. It's the first anniversary of his death. We're talking to her about that.
9:15, we've got the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, and that is Michael Gove, and we're going to be talking, this is our big story today. How do you want to see your area levelled up? Should it be levelled up? And suggestions for him, get in touch at GB News.
If you're a Hollyoaks fan, tune in at 9:10. Actor Cameron Hutchinson is talking about how he managed to clinch his dream job thanks to an amazing wonder drug which has treated his cystic fibrosis.
And at 9:20, there's a doctor in the house, Dr. Emeka Orakocha. He'll be answering health-related questions and talking about the big issues like the MMR vaccination, why measles is on the rise, why vigorous exercise, serious exercise prevents pain in later life, and hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah, lots to talk to him about.
Soon to be available over the counter at chemist shops. So all of those things, if you've got a view, if you've got a question, and if you've got a particular problem, you can't get through to your own doctor, we have got him at GB News, so to make the appointment. Stop being the irritating secretary, because you can't speak to the doctor.
Chipping in, yeah. No, you can. What I'm going to say is if you're listening on the radio, you can't see the pictures of Dr. Emeka. I was going to say, some people find it intimidating if their doctor is really attractive. I wouldn't want to go and say to my doctor, hi, I've got a verruca or bunions.
Well,
if it was Dr. Emeka,
if he's only looking at your feet, I can't see that as much of a problem.
I don't know. Do you know, if he had a gorgeous doctor, would you not feel a bit embarrassed with your ailments?
Depends what they're examining.
Yeah. Anyway, Dr. Emeka's easy on the eye for all our listeners, in case they're wondering.
So Miss Webster will be available to take appointments for that 9:20 slot this morning. You wouldn't be able to get by you, would you, if you were a receptionist?
I'd be very good. I'd be like a bulldog. Yeah. You'd hate me.
All those. You say that woman's come in here and she's.
But if I was your secretary, you would love me.
Imagine you being my secretary. That would be,
I'm in awe of Nicola. She's a good
Vladimir
girl.
Putin, we're now going to talk about today. But we were talking about this, how to take the wind out of Vladimir's sails, and we were saying, call him a different name, pronounce his name differently. But anyway, he's ramping it up against the USA, and he's basically saying, look, you are forcing my country into war as these tensions along the Ukrainian border continue to grow.
Well, all of this comes after Prime Minister Boris Johnson left Ukraine following his warning to Russia that the country will face a package of sanctions at the first sign of an invasion. Our GB News Homes and Security Editor, Mark White, has more.
At key locations along the Ukrainian border, Russian forces continue to mass. Despite international alarm, Moscow says it has no intention of invading its neighbour. But nor does it say when these large-scale military exercises will end. The manoeuvres have sparked intense diplomatic efforts to ease the tensions with Russia, which Western governments fear will end in conflict. But in a clear warning to Moscow, the British Prime Minister flew into the Ukrainian capital to emphasise the UK's support for Kiev.
Today, I've announced a further £88 million of UK funding to support good governance and energy independence in Ukraine. Alongside other countries, we are also preparing a package of sanctions and other measures to be enacted the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukrainian territory.
As well as tens of millions of pounds in additional aid, the UK has stepped up support for the Ukrainian military, with new missile systems and dozens of British personnel training the Ukrainians in their use. In eastern Ukraine, this soldier, a gas drilling specialist in civilian life, has spent 7 years fighting Russian separatists here. He says his comrades are ready to defend their homeland, and any large-scale move by Moscow will cost them dearly.
If they start a military operation here, it will be like Stalingrad for them. We will ensure they're bogged down right across Ukraine.
Ukrainian concerns over Russian aggression are understandable. In 2014, Russian forces entered Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, annexing that region, which is now mostly under Moscow's control. And for years now, in parts of eastern Ukraine, thousands have died as Russian-backed separatists continue to mount a protracted insurgency against Ukrainian forces. Since late last year, there has been a steady build-up of Russian forces along its Ukrainian border, now believed to be in the region of 110,000. A further 30,000 Russian troops are massing on the Belarusian-Ukrainian border to take part in a huge military exercise there. The US and the UK are among the nations planning to help bolster the defences of their allies in the region, like here in Estonia, where American and Belgian jets have been patrolling the airspace here. While over in the Black Sea, Russian naval assets are also massing. These are exercises for now, but manoeuvres with menace. And although the diplomacy continues apace, with brinkmanship, bloodshed is only ever a misstep away. Mark White, GB News.
Let's now go to freelance journalist Stefan Weikart now on all of this, who's based in Ukraine. Stefan, do you ever go near the borders? You know, we talk about all these 100,000 Russian troops amassing on the border and whatever. Do you get a chance to glimpse them?
No, not so far. I mean, they are still a bit away, but I think what we have to understand is that they might not be in sight, but they're not far away, and if they do come, then the war would have, the new Russian invasion would have started.
Give us a sense of what the mood is then where you are. Obviously, there is a lot of concern from Ukraine about a possible invasion, but how much help and support are you feeling with the likes of Boris Johnson making a visit to the region, injecting £88 million yesterday?
There's no doubt that the UK is getting a lot of attention in Ukraine at the moment, both from the political side and from civilians. The support that the UK is giving, both, the military support and the economic support, is crucial for Ukraine. And Ukraine knows that UK is a cornerstone in its defense, in making this coalition among NATO countries to try to deter Russia from doing anything. It's absolutely crucial for Ukraine, and the Ukrainians know it.
Russia keeps on saying, we have no plans to invade. We have no plans. We've just moved 100,000 troops right up against your border, but we've no plans to invade. How credible is that? And if they have no plans to invade, why are there 100,000 troops on the border?
That is exactly the question. We have seen Russia talk about these security guarantees that they want. And, we have seen there is some kind of dialogue still going on. But at the same time, we are seeing that they continue to come soldiers and equipment near the Ukrainian border. So they're sending like two signals. One, we are still ready to negotiate, but we want these really, massive demands, which it seems very unlikely that the West can give them. And on the other side, they're still, talking about what we will make our own guarantees if we don't get what we want. We're seeing more soldiers coming to Ukraine. So it's like a mixed signal. And also yesterday, we also saw Putin, warning, at least saying that he feels like the US is pushing him into war in Ukraine. So I don't know. I'm not so optimistic necessarily. And the people that I'm speaking to in Kiev, for example, when I'm there, are not so optimistic. But it is a different picture where I am right now in eastern Ukraine, because people are accustomed to war, and therefore they are not so easy to scare, I would say. Many of them are simply saying that this is just rumors, nothing will happen.
There is a saying, jaw rather than war, which means let's talk this out. I mean, you talk about their demands and how unreasonable, and that Ukraine or NATO wouldn't be in a position to grant those. But there must be something. There must be something that you say there in Ukraine well, look, we could give them that and, you know, everybody will be happy. Is there anything you think there's movement on?
I think it's very, very difficult. I've been in Ukraine since 2019 and covered this. That means in 2019 there was an optimism that this war, which has been since 2014, could end. But we have seen that the Ukrainian population is not ready to give in to some of the Russian demands. When the president here, Volodymyr Zelensky, back in 2019, tried to implement some of those things in this so-called Minsk agreement, peace agreement that has been reached years ago, we saw the part of the population was not ready to accept that, and they went on the street, and the president backed down. The problem is that there might be something the US would like to give Russia, for example, to avoid this new invasion, but it will be a hard sell for the Ukrainian population.
Stefan, appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. We have to go to the break, and when we come back, we're talking about electric cars and the huge fat difference there is if you charge a car from a street charger rather than from your own home.
Yeah, there's a campaign to scrap the VAT on those public chargers. We're talking about all of that in just a moment.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Right, here's the thing about electric cars. Every time I go to say, must get one, must do so, there's another reason. Somebody's saying to me, oh, but you know, the batteries don't last the way they should. Oh, when you have to replace the battery, it's going to cost you 50,000 quid.
Or they're going to be obsolete because they're developing the technology and it'll be better to wait a couple of years.
Look at your street, for instance.
Yeah, there's no space to charge them.
Would you run a cable out your window,
exactly,
whatever?
yeah.
Anyway, there's a big disparity going on here about what is basically, it has to be unfair VAT on all of this. And with us now in the studio is motoring journalist Quinton Wilson, who himself is a long-term advocate of electric cars. And the great thing about you is, unlike me, where I hesitate, you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. I was driving them in 2009 every day, taking the kids to school, and the kids would say, Daddy, don't take me to school in the electric car. People point and laugh. But testing that technology, in the days when they would do 50 miles to one charge and you put the heater on and it would be 20 miles because it used up the battery. Now we're at a stage where you can do 300 miles in an electric car on a single charge. And I go all over the country in them. I've done 18,000 miles in my electric car in the last year. And the technology works. So I'm saying to people, look, we can do this. We can stop burning stuff. We can stop polluting. We can improve public health. We can increase the levelling up by building, battery factories and electric car factories. But at the moment, we're penalising people who can't charge outside their houses by making them pay 20% VAT on public charging compared to 5% VAT at home. Now, that's nuts, isn't it?
It is nuts, especially if you're trying to encourage it. Why would that be, Quinton?
Because the Treasury, bless them, they make mistakes. And also, not enough people in government drive electric cars. This is really, really important. If
you think like government fleets should be totally
absolutely.
electric now?
Yeah. Not diesels.
Yeah.
So I've done a campaign and we've done a petition on change.org, so change.org/fair charge. And I've got 75,000 people saying we need to make this fairer, make EVs affordable and make charging more affordable and help create all these jobs you're talking about with the levelling up. I mean, this factory up in Northumberland, Britishvolt, that's been given government support. So that's unlocked nearly 3 billion quid in private money, and that's going to create 5,000 jobs. And if we don't do this, Eamonn, our car makers will go abroad where the batteries are made and we'll lose 8 billion quid's worth of economic activity. So this whole kind of just renewable energy from offshore wind, make batteries, highly skilled, highly paid jobs, and improve public health and air quality and all this.
It's a win-win, is what you're saying. It's interesting what you say about how not enough in government are driving electric cars and the fleets should all be electric. You do see the royals turning up in Teslas, don't you? Or indeed, I think Prince William turned up to the Earthshot Prize in an electric Audi. But they're, as you were saying, just unaffordable to the normal person. And is it because it's new technology? Why are electric cars out of reach for most people?
Because the battery cost is so high. So it's about $130 per kilowatt hour. So you've got a 70 kilowatt battery. It's nearly 10,000 quid in battery tech alone in the car. So we need to get that cost down, and the way to get the cost down is to do it in scale and make the batteries here in the UK, not be held to ransom by other companies. So this is what I'm campaigning for. More affordable EVs, more affordable electric car charging, and more infrastructure so we can do this.
Yeah, right, infrastructure, and here's where my reservation comes. Terrace Street, you take a terrace street, right? So say you have 2 chargers, 6 chargers in that terrace street, and you've got 100 houses, right? That doesn't add up to me, right? And then secondly, so you say, well, I'll tell you what I'll do instead. I'll charge it from the house, and you take a cable, if you could even
see that around where I live,
get a cable out the window.
We've all done it, yeah.
What the heck?
But Eamonn, look, you don't have a petrol pump outside your house or in your driveway. Why are you expecting to have, these chargers?
People will go to a petrol station.
An electric charging point, a big one, an EV hub, and they'll put in 300 miles worth of charge in 15, 20 minutes, and that will do them for the week.
Oh, no, you see, I didn't know it was 15, 20 minutes. I thought it had to be like 3 hours or something.
No. If you've got high-speed chargers, ultra-high, and this is what we need to have, we need to have this infrastructure so people could just go in there, charge, do a bit of shopping at the same time, and then make it like a petrol station visit. These EV hubs are really, really important.
And do they exist yet? Are they?
No, not yet, and that's what I'm saying. Let's incentivise the private sector to build these EV hubs so you know and you can say, I'll just slip in there and I'll charge the car up.
So Isabel was saying there are higher costs in buying an electric car. So will the Treasury do their bit, or are you lobbying the Treasury to say, look at this VAT?
I'm lobbying the Treasury to say, look, this is great for us, for society, for public health, to create highly skilled, highly paid new jobs in this high-tech industry that we can drive forward. And the government needs to just help us, incentivise us. I'm not asking necessarily for subsidies, but just make it easy for private enterprise to build this new network of charging stations that we can all use, and we can stop burning stuff.
But one other thing, sorry, I just want to ask. A lot of people also say to me, oh, no, don't do the battery. It's going to be hydrogen is going to be the big factor.
Hydrogen, you need 4 times more energy with hydrogen than you do with electricity to move the car. And the cost of hydrogen, the pipe work, and also, it still pollutes because it's carbon.
Okay. So don't be holding my breath on that one.
No.
Right.
Ask yourself why there are 12 hydrogen stations in the UK and 2 hydrogen cars for sale.
You're saying your car works very well and has done. What are you driving?
I drive a Tesla. And I know that's really expensive, and I'm very lucky to be able to do that, but I will get most of the money I paid back for that car when I sell it. Yeah, because they depreciate so slowly. This is what people don't realise, that if you have an electric car, when you come to sell it, the depreciation is so much less than a combustion car.
Do you have the one that has the gull wing? No. I do not think it's really boring looking, that car that you have. I look at them and I think they're really ordinary looking.
They are. Look,
it's not like driving a DeLorean, is it?
No, but we don't want to drive DeLoreans, Eamonn, do we? Look, stick to the point, mate.
You know, I love my cars.
I know
love
you
my
do,
cars,
I know.
and I think that model of Tesla is bland.
Okay, here's a challenge, everybody. I want to take you out in my Tesla, and I will scare the trousers off you because they are so fast and so smooth and so exciting. So that's another myth.
Exciting.
Yeah, really exciting. Like faster than Lamborghini. That's another myth, that they're not exciting. Like the other myth that the batteries don't last. There is no data to suggest that batteries are failing.
But also the whole point about battery charging, I really care about air quality because I've got small children and we walk them to school and pick them up from school, and there's lots of idling cars around us, right? But the vast majority of journeys, certainly in busy places where I live, are not very far. They're 2 to 3, 4 miles, people doing the school run, people going to drop them off and pick up. So all those people creating that pollution could actually be in electric cars doing these short journeys with batteries that don't last very long. It's a no-brainer.
No, completely. And this air quality, this public health issue, that's huge. And the government needs to realise that actually the money we'll save with these, stopping these 40,000 premature deaths from respiratory diseases because of poor air quality, that's a huge saving for the national health.
Yeah.
And for the next generation and the generation after that.
What electric cars out there are exciting you? You know, we know the new Range Rover's coming out in the spring and whatever. Is there anything you look at and you say, hey, that'll be worth looking at?
There are lots of cars coming down the pipeline. I mean, Aston Martin today have said that they're going to stop making combustion cars and they're going to be making only electric. So, you'll see lots and lots of really exciting cars. But look, I mean, there's a Tesla Plaid which does 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds.
Does it look nice?
200 miles an hour. Yes, it does, mate.
The trouble with the Range Rover is it's so heavy that they can't do electric. Isn't that the problem? They've got to make it very lightweight.
But it looks brilliant.
It's a good British company, JLR, and I'm a great supporter, but we've got to take the weight out of cars and we've got to make them lighter.
So they look a bit funny.
Yeah, completely.
Now, I was in a Tesla once and I thought it was amazing, the digital, the dashboard, the screen. And the screen shows you all these points where you can recharge right around the country. But is it true that there are only power points for Teslas only? It's like mobile phones, that jack doesn't fit or whatever it is. Can they charge anywhere or only at certain points?
Well, you can charge your Tesla at a Tesla supercharger, obviously, but other cars can't. Now, that should change as well. And I'll talk to Elon Musk and say, why can't we democratise this network?
You'll talk to Elon Musk?
Well, yeah, I've met him.
Well, you pick up the phone. Elon, Quinton here.
No wonder he likes his Tesla.
No
He's got mates rates.
No, nobody gets mates rates for Tesla. You pay retail. But look, they established a charging network that is the world leading. Why can't we do the same? And they did it without any fossil flourish. They just built it. Let's get our government to make this charging network in the UK so we have access, everybody has access to affordable, zero-emission motoring.
Yeah,
well, this just seems ridiculous that you would pay 15% more.
20%,
yeah. So you'd normally pay, if you were charging it at home, 5% VAT.
Yeah.
You charge it outside, 20% VAT. Doesn't make sense, mate. How much would it cost you to charge your car?
Okay, each time...
To fill up the tank, as it were.
It's about kind of £8. So I've just had my stats through on my very clever app on the phone. And in last month, £80 in electricity compared to nearly £400 in fuel. So across the year, that's about a £4,000 saving.
Wow. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff.
Got to leave it there, Quinton.
For all of us.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you. Good seeing you. Thank you very much indeed.
The time is 7:37. Stay with us. After the break, Clem Muldoon and David Mellor will be back going through the papers.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
So much to talk about with the papers today. I'm delighted to be welcome broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon, former Conservative Minister, Mr. David Mellor into the studio. Lovely to see you both. And David, we're going to start with you. And this is, you've got Cressida Dick, front page of some of the papers today, and you're taking this from the Metro. And it's about this, what is called banter. Between texts and messages between police officer, racist cops rape bants.
Well, and she's also front page of the Express. In fact, she's everywhere. Look, I better declare an interest here. I was a Home Office Minister for 5 years. I have no time for Cressida Dick whatsoever.
Why?
Because I don't think she was consequential. I don't think she was an effective police officer, and she seems to be surrounded by errors. I mean, that poor chap, John Carlos Menezes, who was shot. She was the gold commander, so-called, on that thing, and also she was behind a lot of the Operation Midland stuff.
Of course, but can I ask you a question? And this may seem really stupid and whatever, but so we have the Sue Gray investigation. Could you explain to me who then calls for the police investigation, knowing that it will impede the publication of Sue Gray? So what's the procedure there?
Well, the police can decide to investigate whatever they want. She having said that she wasn't going to, and the police having said they weren't going to go back into what is, after all, let's face it, relatively ancient history, on what is, after all, not a serious offence. It may be embarrassing, but, you know, you get written to and invited to pay a fine. You pay a fine, they don't even say who you are. You know, you can just get rid of it very quietly. But she then suddenly comes in with her size whatevers and has totally messed up the Sue Gray thing. Though Sue Gray could have said, go away, police officers.
Really?
Oh, of course she could.
Does she have the power to do that?
Oh, yes, of course she could. She'd say, I've got my report to do, I'm doing it. Yeah, quite often when something is done, it's done, and then the police investigate. The idea that you hold off a serious report. But look,
it's the cart before the horse.
The real problem with this dear lady, I'm afraid, is that she simply isn't up to this job. She looks a pretty dried out old husk. She was allowed to stay on for 2 years, but the point was banter. A whole lot of coppers forming groups where they can chat to each other, saying the most terrible things. She's known for ages that was going on, but instead of just dealing with people when what they do is so awful it comes to public notice. She should have totally banned these groups.
She should have banned it at the time of Sarah Everard's murder, after the event and before the event. These things were going on. It's misogynistic, it's disgusting.
These WhatsApp groups?
They're WhatsApp groups within the force.
How can she, if these are private WhatsApp groups?
Nothing is private. They're doing it during their business
work time.
And look, police officers, it's the same with the police, you know. They're supposed to be fit, but a lot of them, you know, gosh, I'm fine one to talk, but a lot of them are carrying, you know, more weight than a sumo wrestler.
I can't believe that. I absolutely agree with you. I look and I say, I could be accepted for the police force. I could be waddling around like a Teletubby in a uniform. How can that be?
Well, because there is no discipline. And one of the things that she should do is say that any communications between police officers have to be done either in a way that is above reproach, or you do not have these groups. You do not have these groups. The police are supposed to be a disciplined force.
There's a complete lack of discipline, but it all goes back to how they're recruited now too.
Yes.
And we covered it on Saturday papers here. There are more online recruitment drives by lots of police forces.
So they never
in England.
meet in person.
They never meet in person.
And you can say, Claire, you can become a police officer, or you can do the training or whatever. Just with a phone call.
Where are the checks and all of this? You know, where are the DBS checks, where are the rigorous checks?
But maybe it's harder, Claire, to recruit police officers nowadays. Maybe they have to do this. I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but I think it's nothing to do with the pandemic now. We need to get back to first principles. We need to get... Remember, policemen used to be respected, actually, in some... You used to go to a police officer to get your passport signed. I don't think people would do that.
If you're a woman
respect.
out at night and you see a policeman, are you going to think that policeman's there to help me, or are you going to worry what he might do?
Well, I'm pretty old school. I would hope and trust that they were there to help me, and that's what I would think.
I don't think police realise that Sarah Everard case, how destructive that was of confidence in the police.
Yeah.
But it seems to float...
That should have come from above. That should have come from Cressida Dick, and I believe that she should be removed because of this and all the other feelings.
But why was she allowed to stay on? Her time expired. She's been allowed to drift on for 2 years, and it's perfectly obvious that nothing has been done to get a grip of the police. And if the head of the Metropolitan Police goes and someone is brought in as a genuine reformer, we need another Robert Mark. I'm probably talking about someone who's ancient history, but Robert Mark was brought in half a century ago to reform the Metropolitan Police, and he did a good job. Where is today's Robert Mark? You know?
Well, I am absolutely shocked to hear that there should be no particular priority to the police investigation over Partygate. That, to me, I just can't get my head around that.
But they have to stand up to the police. What I find extraordinary is that a discredited woman like Cressida Dick, who said that we're not going to investigate this, and then she suddenly decides to do, fine, you investigate away all you like. But the Sue Gray report is far too important to be left on the back burner.
Why was it redacted?
And she should, because she agreed to do it. She should have said to the police, sorry, you got a wrong number here.
Yeah.
Or go and sort yourselves out. I'm going to do a proper job. I'm not going to be messed up by, let's face it, number 10 is discredited. Name me an institution that's even more discredited than number 10. Why we have the Metropolitan Police.
Yeah. OK, views on that, let us have them. Claire, I want to move to this medical matter here, if that's OK, because we're going to be discussing this with the doctor after 9 o'clock today. And this is hormone replacement therapy. After consultation, the procedure could be completely simplified because you just turn up at your chemist and you say, there's my prescription or whatever, I can have this again. What's your view?
You see that. HRT affects 13 million women, in this country, and that's 1 in 5 of the population. 1 in 4 of those that are either perimenopausal or menopausal are seeking some form of therapy through hormone replacement therapy. And it's difficult to get because the symptoms, women are generally self-diagnosing. Mr. Google is great for diagnosing everything else. Why don't I key my symptoms in and see what it comes out with? And more often than not, they're being prescribed antidepressants or painkillers, and they're not getting to the root cause of menopause, which can be deeply offensive to women in terms of how they can then live their lives. So there's calls now for HRT to be sold over the counter. You can get contraception pills over the counter now. You can get abortion pills over the counter now. Everything is seen to be moving away from GPs and controlled prescriptions to over-the-counter fixes. I'm not in favour of this at all. I think there's too many issues surrounding HRT. There's not enough research and development into the effects of HRT on women. I would like to see the money put into that, to helping women move forward, because it's a standard thing that will happen to every single woman in this country.
And there are not enough doctors to go round, and they don't have enough time. And if it's going to happen to every single woman, they pretty much know the effects of it. So why would you just not make the procedure more simple?
Because there's varying degrees of simplicity, there's varying degrees of hardship when you're going through the menopause. You can be thrust into the menopause with a full hysterectomy. There's loads of different issues. You've got women from different demographics. We're all going through it, and we need to get it
I'm
sorted.
interested that you're not in favour of that, so that's a very good point. We'll log that. You want to go to the Times, David, and back to Prosecco-fuelled parties.
Well, you see, this is the problem for Boris. Boris, it is said, would like to draw a line under all of this. And indeed, it is a national humiliation, an international humiliation. You know, he's gone on a very important mission to the Ukraine, and all he gets asked about is parties in number 10. You know, they even have a press conference in Washington with Jen Psaki, the president's press secretary, reduced to hysteria when she's asked a question about whatever the thing was about some ambush by a birthday cake or something. Has the president been ambushed by a birthday cake? And she starts laughing. This is the problem for Boris. He's a laughingstock. How can he cease to be a laughingstock? He ceases to be a laughingstock if it's possible. Personally, I don't think it is, by drawing a line under this. How can he draw a line under this when we have, for instance, on page 8, Dominic Cummings will never let it go. And, you know, silly Carrie, bless her heart, falling out with Dominic Cummings. I mean, it's a bit like treading on the head of a rattlesnake and then saying to the rattlesnake, you can bite me if you like. And the rattlesnake said, thanks very much, I'm going to bite you every day. Now, the Times, page 8, Prosecco Fuel Leaving Party. This was one we didn't know about. Fancy him drinking Prosecco. I quite like Prosecco, but I'd have thought they could have had some champagne, don't you? But anyway, they drink Prosecco, probably cheap Prosecco. It doesn't matter. It's an alcoholic drink at a time when alcoholic drinks were forbidden. Every day we're going to get this, because you know, all these great singer-songwriters, they have back catalogues.
Yes.
Well, Boris has got a back catalogue, I'm sure, of endless things that he shouldn't have done. Because the fundamental problem with Boris, if you ask me to sum it up, you haven't, but I'm going to.
Sum it up for me.
Right. He thinks rules apply to other people, not to him.
Yeah, and that's
He's lived his life like that.
Yeah. What's a Wordle?
Do you know what? You've not been on social media, Mr. Holmes. Do you not see all these yellow and green boxes everywhere?
No.
Wordle is set up by an English boy who graduated in 2006 from Royal Holloway University. He launched an app because him and his girlfriend loved word things and word games. And this is called Wordle. It's a free app. It's a free game. It's got everybody talking on Twitter. I've not actually started it. I don't think I ever will, because I'm not that much into Scrabble. 5 letters. 1 word a day is released, and you've got to input the letters in. If the letter is correct, but in the wrong place, a yellow square lights up.
Oh, I'm bored already.
If you put...
Who cares?
Let's get back to Boris.
Too long.
Listen, Carrie doesn't even fit in there. Boris doesn't fit in there. So let's flush it down the toilet. You do it if you want. It's all around the world at the moment. It's been bought for a 7-figure sum by the New York Post.
And that means 10 million, doesn't it? No, seriously.
Well, we don't know the exact figure.
But well done him.
Yeah. So what do you mean? They bought everything, or they bought the right to run it every day?
They bought everything. He's now defunct.
Oh, there you go.
Aren't we all?
We don't
get 10 million for being defunct. That's the problem.
I'll tell you what is in there, though. WINE.
Come and see us
and
again.
Prosecco wouldn't even begin to get in there.
Not at all. Come and see us again in an hour's time. Claire and David, thank you both very much indeed. Let's get an update. That's what's in the papers, what's on the back pages. Let's go to Isabel with Paul Coyte.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned Paul Coyte because I don't know what was on the back pages, but Paul is the man who does. Tell us all about it. Look, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, Paul, about transfer deadline day, second highest total being spent, 295 million. But at the same time, we were talking about the fate of clubs like Derby County. So what have they been branded as now? There's this allegation that they're disgusting by Gillingham club chairman.
Yeah. Paul Scally from Gillingham has said that Premier League clubs are disgusting and obscene, but the thing is we're always going to see that because the amount of money that's going to be spent in the Premier League is always going to be a huge amount of money because supply and demand, and of course we know that there are so many clubs that are suffering, which is a horrible thing, and there's ways that money could be passed there down the pyramid, which is, if it's possible, then it's great, but I think it's a bit difficult to be able to then just point the finger and say, well, that's not fair because they're spending so much money. These are huge world companies. And if you look at the size of Liverpool, you look at Manchester United, these are enormous. So there's always going to be huge money that's spent on players.
Yeah.
So it's just understandable. It's unfortunate, but it's going to happen.
The players do, or a lot of them anyway, do spend a lot of money on, grassroots sport and good works would be the justification, I suppose. OK, let's turn our attention to Everton. They had a really busy transfer deadline day, not least with Frank Lampard.
Of course.
But he's brought in Ashley Cole to join his...
Yeah, Ashley Cole, who played alongside at Chelsea for so long. Ashley, a hugely experienced footballer. He's been working at Chelsea with the under-21s. You may have seen him on TV. A very good pundit as well. But he's been called up by Frank to come and work with him at Everton, which I think is probably a very good decision. He's getting a lot of a new backroom staff. There's Paul Clement, who he worked with at Chelsea, who was at Real Madrid and also was Swansea manager. So he's working with him. I've got a feeling that this could be the thing for Frank. It worked very well for him at Derby. Chelsea was probably just a little too early for him. It just didn't work out there. But I think this is heading in the right direction.
You're a Spurs fan, though, aren't you?
Yes.
So what do you make of his decision with Dele Alli? It's a free transfer, but there's lots of questions about whether or not Frank can actually bring back his genius, as it were.
The genius was there. I mean, young kid, he was like 19, unbelievable player. And he went from strength to strength. He became the Young Player of the Year. And then Isabel, he was in the England side. He was like undroppable in the England side, and then things started to turn. Now, I've watched him for a long time, and I'm still trying to get to the bottom of exactly what it was. Is it something that's in his head?
It's just the classic playbook of, youngster suddenly earns lots of money, becomes famous, and gets distracted for a bit.
I would think it probably is. But the problem is can you then get it back?
Yeah.
Can you get to a point where you think, well, it's been going really well. Now I can see I may have dropped the ball, literally, and now I can go back to how I was, and people are saying, this is what we want you to do. There was a Spurs documentary that Jose Mourinho was speaking to him on there, and he's saying, be like you were. And Dele sort of like sitting there and like a naughty schoolboy just going, yeah, OK, all right, we'll see how it goes. It hasn't worked out at Spurs. Is it going to work out at Everton? I don't know.
Am I right in thinking he's the same position that Frank Lampard used to play?
Yes.
Whether or not that could also be...
It could be, but they're very, very different characters, whereas Frank was someone who, when he was a young player, he had to really work for it. And I think he'd be the first to say he didn't have that natural talent of Dele Alli, but he worked and worked and worked, extra time after training, and he just stuck with it, and a very, very hard worker. This is what Dele Alli needs.
Yeah.
So maybe Frank's advice, but it all depends whether Dele Alli wants to listen and whether he wants to actually continue with his career.
Just a final word on the Duchess of Cambridge. I've just seen on my Instagram feed new pictures of her chucking a rugby ball around, and this is because of her new role, which is...
Well, she's now the patron of the Rugby Football Union and the Rugby Football League. So she's the patron of both codes in England, which could then cause ructions in the family because William is the patron of the Welsh Rugby Football Union, and I believe Princess Anne is still the patron of Scotland as well.
They're used to it then, aren't they?
They are.
The Six Nations coming up, they can slog it out during that.
I'm sure they'll get on
They'll be fine.
But the great video with her passing the ball, very good.
And I'm being told we're going to have those pictures a little bit later on to show you of the Duchess of Cambridge. But for now, Paul, thank you very much. Over to you, Eamonn.
Thank you. Just to say, after the break, we like to say we open up our airwaves to you, that your views make our news at GBNews if you're going to tweet. And we're doing just that with a viewer who's going to be telling us about the cost of living and the energy crisis, how it's hitting her finances. So her real story, her true story, her name's Helen, and she's from Croydon. We're going to be talking to her right after the weather update.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for many, but a cloudy start as well. I'm hopeful that there will be some brighter weather at times in the south, particularly by the afternoon. Whilst further north, the weather front is moving west to east. It's a fairly weak front, but it is bringing thicker cloud to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, along with some outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. That rain and drizzle tending to become persistent in places, particularly over the Pennines, southern uplands, West Highlands and parts of Northern Ireland. So dull and damp across some northern and western parts of the country, but brighter skies developing the Midlands, southern and southeast England, parts of eastern Scotland at times as well. Shetland in the far north seeing a few more showers and staying cold here, whilst it's much milder elsewhere, double figures widely across the country. Feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine, where we get some of that in central and southern England. Into the evening then, and thicker cloud once again spreads across the vast majority of the country, and with winds coming from a mild direction, well, temperatures aren't going to drop particularly, and even in Shetland they'll stay above freezing. So a frost-free start for virtually all of us on Thursday morning. A cloudy start though, with those outbreaks of rain continuing for parts of Scotland. Heavy at times in the west, particularly over the Highlands. And it really turns more showery as we head through the morning tomorrow, with some heavy bursts at times. But for many, it's looking like a dry afternoon initially. Some sunshine there for central and eastern England before heavier rain moves into the far northwest as we end the day. This is an active weather front, and it's going to clear southeastwards by Thursday night, and into Friday it will turn the temperatures down, but it will introduce brighter skies and blustery showers for Friday itself. So a mixture of sunny spells and showers on Friday, feeling colder in the wind.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. Long-awaited plans to level up the UK are finally published by the government today.
Good morning to you. It is 1 minute past 8. It's Wednesday, the 2nd of February. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Coming up, The government has set out a blueprint to help improve life in parts of the UK, including providing more power to the regions. But Labour says the plans don't go far enough.
We're going to be speaking live to the Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, at 8:45. If you have a question, if you have an idea, if you've got a philosophy about levelling up and what it should be, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
The Prime Minister will announce state-backed loans to help people cope with rising energy prices. We're asking if this is enough to solve our cost of living crisis.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson's getting tough on the world stage, warning Russia that Britain will hit Moscow with sanctions the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukrainian territory. The latest on that to come.
And on the first anniversary of his death, the daughter of Captain Sir Tom Moore will join us live in the studio to look back on his incredible achievement, raising £39 million for the NHS by walking 100 laps of his garden.
This levelling up situation, which is across the news agenda today, and as we say, we're speaking to Michael Gove at 8:45 this morning. Alice says, definitely stop building new houses. You're cramming more in. It makes the country worse to live in. And she's got a good point here, Isabel, because she's talking about brown space building. Renovate all the spare office and shop space, and there's a lot of that now in city centres. Make them into living accommodation. And developers have a lot to answer for. Make it illegal for developers to demolish small houses and bungalows to make way for £1 million houses. You can't get a bungalow for love nor money.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, you can't in city centres.
I'm at an age where I'm looking for a bungalow. Has anybody out there got a bungalow with a sea view? I'm your man, OK? I'm your man. That's where I'm going.
This is what Helen thinks about levelling up. She says it's a good idea, but here in Cornwall, we feel forgotten. Poor transport. Some towns only have one bus a day, and some villages only a week. No major industry except tourism. We would love to get to London in 4 hours. And a lot of people think about levelling up as about, joining up the north-south divide, but actually South West so often neglected. I think you're right, Helen.
Interesting point. Sue, the problem is the way our country is London-centric. London is like another country. This is absolutely true. More people live in London than Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland put together. And people forget that. You know, in Northern Ireland, there are 1.5 million people in total. So what?
We're 7 million here, aren't we?
It's about the size of what? About probably... Gosh, Manchester's got more than that, 5 million. So
probably Clapham. Clapham's probably got 1 million.
Probably.
Just in one part of London.
Probably,
Clive says it's awful to see the high street so empty, the shops standing empty, mostly boarded up. But then you see that online sales have increased tenfold. You can't have both, I'm afraid. Cut business rates, severely reduce the rents for these shops and give business people a fighting chance to make our high streets what they used to be.
The worst people of all are the landlords that own retail space in our town and city centres. And it'll boil down to the same 20 people or so all over the country. And they're the ones that make it impossible for the optician shops, for the little knick-knack shops, for the independent boutiques to exist in your town or your village. And I think something should be done about those guys.
I just found out yesterday my local retail park where you can drive, park your car and pop into the Boots, the chemist or whatever it might be, it's going to be turned into flats.
Flats again?
Yeah.
Well, now every police station, every fire station, what else can you see on the high street?
Power station.
But all you see now is estate agents on the high street.
Nail bars.
Nail bars, Turkish barbers. What else is there? There's very little variety.
Food, fried chicken, wherever you go.
Well, there's nothing much wrong with that. That's fine. Anyway, a GB News viewer, you could say the GB News viewer. No, another one has flooded in. We go to Helen Hampton. Helen is in Croydon. And Helen, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you this morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Hello.
Good. And Helen, but the real thing, the lovely thing is, we just want to get out and about and we just want to hear what is on people's chests and what you want to get off your chest, Helen.
Well, I mean, this morning you're talking about levelling up, and I think that's a great thing that we finally moved the conversation on, hopefully from the sort of Partygate thing that's been dominating the news and has been, I think a lot of people are sick to the back teeth of. I certainly am. I don't want to hear any more about it. But as far as levelling up is concerned, I think, it is such an important thing. We have a great country, and it has for a long time. We've seen the decline in the north, and we know, you had some people being interviewed in Wolverhampton earlier on, and you can see what's happening there that is just simply not fair. And you're quite right, this enormous metropolis that we have, which is not the rest of the country, and it doesn't sort of relate, the rest of the country doesn't relate to London, but yet we are draining the young people away from the north, and indeed places like Cornwall. I run my own business, and I have choirs, and I have a choir down in Cornwall. It's almost impossible for me to get to unless I drive. I can't get there on public transport because really the trains stop at Exeter, and then it's, to get a taxi or something to where I want to go on to would be ridiculous. So we have major infrastructure problems with transport and getting cross country too. I mean, I think this is the sort of sad argument about HS2 and HS3. I believe now that the very bit that would have connected the east and west of the country has now been scrapped, which is really sad, because it seems to me that was the most important thing of all. But this paper, and I've looked at it briefly, it's everything it says is absolutely right, and it is what we want. We want people to have equal opportunities in education. We want people to be able to work close to their homes and to be able to live and work and have great jobs and a meaningful life, not so far removed from their families, because of course in the end that has a knock-on effect. As your parents get older, I see this all the time with people I know in London, that parents are frequently hundreds of miles away, and as they get older and are needing more care, we are then having to drop everything and try and drive up there to help them, and it's just they're not round the corner. And I think all these things, once you start moving people away from the place they were brought up in, it has a terribly detrimental effect. So, I mean, I really hope that this levelling up will actually start to address all those issues, and that they look at the communities as a whole. We've lost our manufacturing. We need to bring it back. We talk about our reliance on China. All these things are interconnected. Let's bring back our manufacturing. We've got great skills, and we need to find those skills and utilize them and bring them to areas where they used to have great manufacturing traditions, and make those areas thriving again. Because what you see when you look at somewhere like Wolverhampton or some of the seaside towns, that really are struggling in the day and age of cheap flights and people going abroad for their holidays and not necessarily going to the coast for their holidays, they're in a parlous state. And now as we all feel the pinch of the cost of living going up, it's even more imperative that we sort this out, that we stop looking at London. London is not Great Britain. It is not Great Britain, and we have to stop.
Helen,
politicians. Yeah.
Helen, did you ever think about becoming a politician? I'm beginning. I've rarely heard an argument put so eloquently and passionately and calmly, and I think everybody will be applauding you for what you're saying.
Well, thank you. But, I feel strongly about it. We are a wonderful nation full of wonderful people. And if you go up to the north and you see some of the small traditional factories, or to Wales or things, and you've actually featured some of them on GBNews in the last sort of year or so since you started, which has been lovely to see. There's a guy I saw a feature on in the early days of GBNews who's developing hydrogen cars and going up and seeing factories doing this and little businesses doing this. These are the things that we need to support. We are an amazing nation. We've always been full of invention and get up and go. And funnily enough, and I know you're not a big Boris fan, Eamonn, funnily enough, I kind of get the feeling of that, but that is what people like about Boris. His joie de vivre and his bullish optimism. And I think actually it's kind of what the country needs at the moment, putting aside Partygate and all the other arguments and everything that David Mellor said this morning, we need actually to stop feeling miserable. We need to stop feeling angry and divided. Brexit has been a hugely divisive thing in the country. And, you know, whereas people used to go down the pub and just sort of have a kind of, well, I think this, I think that, but they'd still have a drink together and they'd still go to work together the next day, and it wouldn't be an issue. With the internet, with Twitter, with social media, we are now all the time. And one of the things that Boris does is he just has that kind of bullish optimism. And frankly, I think that's a great thing for this country.
Yeah, although in Eamonn and my defence, we don't really express our opinion. We just ask the questions and challenge the narrative.
No, I understand.
I just wanted to pick up, because obviously you referenced what David Mellor was saying there, and of course he has been publicly critical of Boris Johnson, and he's saying there's a lot of bluster and he needs to back up this levelling up white paper with substance. And of course we've got Michael Gove a little bit later on in the programme, and what we'll be wanting to hear from him, because no one can disagree with any of the things you've said. Yes, all of those ambitions are laudable and we have a wonderful country. How do you do that, Michael Gove, when actually at the same time you're raising national insurance, we're seeing energy prices rising, and a lot of ordinary people are going to be feeling the squeeze? It's a huge challenge, this.
Yeah, I think it is. And you know, I want a Conservative government. I don't want a sort of wishy-washy, half in, half out Conservative government. I want lower taxes. I mean, I'm self-employed and I run my own business, and things are very difficult.
Helen, what do you work out? What is your business?
I run choirs that sing pop music. And
choirs?
So,
like
I mean, yes. Yeah, choirs. I mean, I'm a professional. Yes, I'm a professional singer by trade, but I run choirs that sing pop music. Yeah.
Give us an example. But, you know, sorry, we're fascinated by this. We'll get back to the politics in a minute. So what pop songs might we know that your choirs have appeared in?
Oh, well, we sing pop songs. So we sing a whole range of anything from sort of older ones to things that are in the charts, you know, a bit of Katy Perry, a bit of The Killers, bit of, you know, all sorts.
Fabulous. Sorry. Are we
well,
that's different.
But you know, I've been self-employed all my life, and it's not an easy thing being a musician. It's certainly not easy being a Conservative musician, let me tell you that now in this day and age. But what we find is, particularly, you know, in my business now, running choirs, I'm running a business which is a sort of extra. And so I'm a sole director limited company, and so there was no help for me over the lockdown, but that's okay. You know, we sort of got through. But my kind of business, and it would be the same for, you know, leisure clubs, you know, people doing yoga, dance, Pilates, gym clubs, you know, there's all sorts of extra things that people do with their lives that if they don't have disposable income, they can't afford. So the knock-on effect of the cost of living, the squeeze, the rising energy prices, the rising national insurance, rising taxes, rising everything, has a terrible effect on business. And actually, I do think it's the wrong way around. You need to lower taxes. You need to I would scrap VAT. What the hell is VAT? Value added tax. For what? It makes no sense. Put it on the really, really, really luxury items. If you buy a luxury yacht for, you know, £500,000, great, put some VAT on that. But on ordinary things that we, you know, like coming to my choir, VAT, why does somebody need to pay VAT? It cripples my business. So, you know, I desperately, you know, I would, if I had the government in front of me, I would be saying, what are you doing? Stop it. I know we've come through a pandemic and we have taken on a lot of debt, but we are crying out for you to lower taxes, make our lives easier, give people more control of their money so that they can actually spend it on things that will then keep other businesses going, which will bring the tax in. Because if all the businesses like mine can't survive because people don't have that excess money, then, you know, everybody's poorer.
Well, as I say, it is fascinating getting your whole perspective. But Helen, you know, I look at you and I think, you know, you're working, you're trying to do the right thing, you're obviously doing well at your work. And as a self-employed person, I look at government and I go, they pretend they want you to be self-employed. They don't want you to be self-employed at all. No. They don't. They make it so difficult to be self-employed. Yeah. And
it's another thing. And I mean, yeah, and I know that you in the television industry have had this whole issue with the IR35. Yeah. I mean, IR35 should be scrapped. It's complete nonsense. It makes, as a jobbing singer, it makes our life impossible. You can't be self-employed as a musician. And I understand that there have been, this term gig economy that's grown up, because there are now people doing several different jobs, and we should be looking at why they need to be doing that, perhaps. But it doesn't take away from the genuine people who are in trades and professions that need to be self-employed. IR35 is a complete disaster. It makes everything impossible. We have to be able to offer our services and just get paid and then deal with it. I mean, the tax system for being self-employed is bad enough as it is, having to pay it up front and then claw it back. It's just, you can have a really good year and it may make up for the two. This is what used to happen to me when I was younger, that, you were trying to get on the ladder, you didn't work very much, so you were hand to mouth, you were very poor, you were racking up debt. Then maybe you got a tour or something, or a summer season, or you got some work that actually paid you some money, and you're like, great, my head's just above water. Oh no, tax, all gone. There's no sort of looking back at how you've been. And I understand. I mean, I feel huge sympathy for you, particularly in the television profession. I know you've been clobbered by this, and I think it's grossly unfair.
And that retrospective. We can't disagree with that. It's retrospective, and if people are wondering what we're talking about, if you're a gardener, if you're a window cleaner, if you're a taxi driver, if you're a supply teacher, they will come for you on this, and you will think you're self-employed, and they will make a reason for you not being self-employed. And the reason they go for people like me is they want to make headlines, they want to make examples, and they want to make you think, I've no sympathy for him because he's on the telly and he must earn loads of money. If only they knew, Isabel. If only they knew. Helen, I have to say, Helen, it has been so educational and an absolute pleasure, so refreshing listening to you. I've never met anybody who runs a choir before.
Me neither.
As a job. I mean,
I want to join one of your choirs. I hope there are some in London. I'm going to have this conversation offline with you. All right.
You have to be able to sing.
I enjoy singing. That's the main thing.
They are in London. You'd be very, very welcome, and we'll bring a choir to GBNews and sing for you there.
Oh my goodness! There we go.
We may take you up on that. Be very careful about offering that. Helen Hampton from Croydon, who runs choirs. That's her views, and we were delighted to air them. I hope you felt happy, Helen, being able to air them. Do you feel better for all of that?
I do. And the other one last thing, when you've got mortgages for young people. I have two children in their 20s. What hope for our young people? For goodness sake, they are paying more in rent than they would possibly pay as a mortgage. What is that? What's the point of that?
What is the point of that?
Let's sort ourselves out and get us back to a place where we can all afford a house, we can all afford our heating, we can afford to go and do the things that we want to do, whether it's nail bars or joining a choir or doing a dance class or, having a gardener or a cleaner. And that is the way the economy is made better.
Helen Hampton for Prime Minister. I'm starting it here. Thank you.
I'll do it.
You'll do it. Very good. Lovely talking to you. Thank you for letting us into your home this morning. Thank you very much.
Stay with us on Breakfast. After the break, we'll be remembering our fundraising hero. It's been a year since the death of Captain. So Tom and his daughter will be joining us in the studio.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now, here's a bit of a scary, disturbing story, and this comes from Teesside, and we just want to draw your attention to this because it may be happening in your area as well, or you may have a theory as to why it is happening, and we're talking about
Tens of thousands of dead crabs and lobsters have been washing up on beaches, as you say, in and around Teesside. It's been happening
dolphins
for 3
and
months.
seals.
Yeah, lots of sea life, and nobody knows why, and that's despite an ongoing investigation.
Our North East of England reporter, that's Rachel Sweeney, brings this story to you.
Locals described the scenes back in October as apocalyptic. Tens of thousands of dead crabs and lobsters washing up on beaches around Teesside. Large fish have also been found dead along the coastline. The Environment Agency and science advisors CFAS have been working to find the cause, but it remains unknown, and DEFRA has now taken control of the investigation. There have also been reports of dead seals too, and some pet owners say their dogs have taken ill after walks on the beach. But DEFRA says there is no evidence to link either of these incidents to the current investigation.
The cause of the deaths remain a mystery. The Environment Agency has ruled out chemical pollution, and investigators have also ruled out sewage, dredging and undersea cabling.
Redcar Beach would usually be busy with visitors. The few who are continuing to use the beach are still spotting dead crabs. Businesses are affected because fishermen are affected, and that has an impact on supply. There is also much lower footfall in the area, and the unsightly scenes don't have locals rushing to order seafood.
When they're seeing, crabs that they're put off by eating shellfish and eating seafood. But I think for me as a chef, the demand is still there. The supply is going down, and that obviously puts the price up for catering and chefs in particular. When buying fish, I think you still can do it. There's fantastic fishmongers out there, especially in the northeast. So please do have faith in your fishmonger.
20 minutes down the road is picturesque Saltburn by the Sea. Visitor numbers there are starting to pick back up, but fishermen are still struggling and waiting for answers.
I think the longer this goes on, the more serious it is. I mean, January is not a high catching period normally, but if this was to go on, obviously the impacts are cumulative. But I think this is very much something that we need to address as a matter of urgency. We've raised questions in Parliament to make sure that there's the political attention to find the solution and that the resources are put into finding that solution.
As DEFRA's investigations continue, local people, fishermen and businesses are eager to know the cause to find a solution. Rachel Sweeney, GB News.
Well, what a mystery that is.
Yeah,
and so disturbing.
Awful.
Yeah, what is doing it? Something is doing it. And so if you've got a view on that, if you've got an experience on that, let us know at GB News.
Coming up after the break, we're going to be looking at the papers of David Mellor and Claire Muldoon. Following on from that, we will be hearing from Michael Gove about his plans to level up the country.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview, channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Not only have I been enjoying the company of David Mellor and Claire Muldoon today going through the papers, you have been too. You've enjoyed their performances today. We come back to them again. So lovely seeing you guys. And we go into the Express here, David, with you. The government isn't protecting taxpayers. Ministers have a duty to protect taxpayers. And we're talking about a huge amount of lost money.
Yes, there's quite a lot on that, and also in the Times. I mean, what appears to have happened is the government were very slow off the mark, and indeed were sending PPE, you know, these masks and things, back to China at the beginning. That was the time, beginning of 2020, when Boris was too busy doing his other things, perhaps his family issues, to actually go to the Cobra emergency meetings. Suddenly they discover they're short of PPE, and then there's this frantic attempt to get it in from anywhere, including, I mean, what I've already denounced this morning, but it bears repeating, this awful business where if you were recommended by someone who was in politics, you had an inside track. Scandalous, and that needs to be fully looked at. But also, some of the people that were getting PPE contracts, I mean, there's all this trouble about dear Baroness Brahm, Michelle Mone. What did she have to do with all of this? A lot of speculation in the papers. I'm not in a position to comment on it.
Not a storm in a teacup, let me tell you that.
Yeah, or a D cup or a Z cup. But anyway, but basically, it appears that billions of pounds worth of public money. I mean, I was Chief Secretary of the Treasury once. The sort of money they're talking of, even when I was Chief Secretary 30 years ago, is an awful lot. And, you know, it just seems the casualness, you know, it's to update the Groucho Marx, famous Groucho Marx comment. Billion here, billion there, soon they'll be talking real money. I mean, it's ridiculous.
This is taxpayers' money. The governments are there to protect the taxpayers,
Could I not
surely.
say to both of you, we had a pandemic, we had a crisis. I mean, there was a sort of complete lack of understanding what COVID was doing. I mean, if you remember all the news reports at the time, we just all thought we were going to die.
Yeah.
Well, I know.
Well, that was the narrative.
I must tell you, I was always able, thank God, despite my increasing age, to tell the difference between the Black Death and COVID, okay? But I tell you something, when they get serious professional people in, for instance, over the creation of and distribution of a vaccine, when they had serious professional people, that worked well. It was when it was amateurs' night, with, for instance, the Department of Health, a minister in the House of Lords whose role ought to be looked at very closely. When you look at at what was happening in the Department of Health. They seem to be all over the place. And I just think you cannot chuck public money away like that.
Globally, everyone was scrambling for evidence at the beginning. Let's move on from that, though. We are now facing, as a British taxpayer, money that's been squandered away, money that is lost, money that is trying to be written away.
You don't think it's reclaimable or that
well, it's not. It's been written off. But I think underhand, which is happening now, is the hike in NI actually will bring us back up to cover it.
But why are they writing it off? They're writing it off to save themselves embarrassment. Look, you know, I forget who it was who said, wish it was me, maybe it was you, those who fail to learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them.
Yeah.
You know, this shambles has got to be cleaned up.
Very shortly, we're going to have the Levelling Up Minister, Michael Gove, and that's another subject that you've got to take in the mirror on this one.
Yeah, well, the white paper will be issued today, and there's 12 bold mission statements in it to help these red wall areas from the north of England and the south of England as well. This only pertains to England. What they want to do is set up Boris boroughs. They've been known as with their 12-point rollout plan of increasing money within these areas, increasing infrastructure. They're trying to tackle crime. They want to increase legislation to help people live their lives. They want a parity across the country. But what's happened is actually from the start of this, it's the most affluent Conservative constituents that have actually had more funding than the Labour constituents. So this has to be addressed as well. And I'd like Michael Gove to address that when he comes on. The money has to be accountable. Yeah. The money has to be given to the right places at the right time. We need to educate people. We need to keep them well and as happy. And we need to tackle crime. And drug crime is one of the fundamental ones that's driving down the poorest of the community.
Do you say this is only in England? Because I'm seeing a headline today that says devolution revolution.
Well, no, it's devolution. They're wanting to devolve the local council areas.
Oh, right.
So that they want to move the control out of Whitehall and move into and they're actually talking about bringing in mayors of these different boroughs. But, you know, you've got shops closing down all over the place. People, the whole shopping model has changed. People are buying things online now. We're moving away from fast fashion, hopefully, because we want to be greener. We want to be more in control of things. We want to have less waste. So there's a huge difference in the way we shop, in the way we eat, the way we procure things, and the way things are going. People won't be able to afford to eat or indeed heat their homes.
I have to say, why are we hearing about this suddenly? I mean, the cynic in me suddenly goes, exactly. This is a good distraction, isn't it? Let's talk about this.
I agree, but also what we need to bear in mind is that levelling up is not a new policy. It bears repeating. Even under Harold Macmillan, Lord Hailsham, conspicuously unsuitable choice, was sent to the North East to try to level up the North East. One of the things that I was most proud of in my period at the Department of Health was the amount of improvements that were made, not by me, but I just happened to preside over a period when the benefits were coming in, where a lot of cities outside of London were getting first-class hospitals. And we were talking earlier on about Newcastle. Newcastle is a wonderful medical centre doing all kinds of advanced operations and things like that. That was not the case 30, 40 years ago. So levelling up is not a new thing. It's something that should have been happening and has been happening over several decades. The worrying thing is that, you know, when you've got a Prime Minister like Boris, who is primarily concerned with the message, and it doesn't seem to matter to him very much whether the message is an accurate one or not, what we need to know is what is actually happening beneath the message to ensure that real progress is made. This is where Michael Gove comes in. It'll be interesting to know. I mean, he, you know, forget about some of the curiosities of him as a presenter of political case or as a politician. One of the things he's good at is running a department and getting the best out of a department and doing practical things. I think a lot will turn on whether he's going to be able to say today that there is real meat in this. It isn't just, you know, it's not just smelling. Not just the headline. You're not just smelling the roast, you're seeing the joint as well.
We don't want sound bites, we want action, and we want things to happen, and we want positive things to happen.
There's an incredible social injustice about all of this when you think of, we had a report from Wolverhampton today, and we could, I don't want to name anywhere else because people might say there's nothing wrong with our area, but you can see it. You can see boarded up shops, as you were saying, Claire, about the shopping model. When are we going to address the fact that you've got, on the M6 or the M3 or whatever, massive warehouses for Amazon and whoever else is about there, and they're not in shops anymore. It's not.
That's right.
I didn't even. This is how stupid I am. I didn't realise you could actually order your groceries from Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know
Amazon is taking over the world, but the other thing is that the suggestion was some months ago now, and I don't see anything to think it isn't true, that 20% of shops that closed during the pandemic will not reopen.
Yeah.
And, I make a point, actually, as I walk down a high street looking to see the empty shops. It is dismal. Personal service has gone, and all you get is now this ridiculous thing. I had a box arrived at home.
Yeah.
I thought, my gosh, the crown jewels have been sent to me, a huge box.
Yes.
Open it up, and there's a tiny little thing. And you think, is this really state-of-the-art modern distribution, or is this just another way of wasting resources?
It's not even a waste of resource. With masks now, the bleak communication skills that children and the young adults will lose going into a shop, being face-to-face in front of someone, articulating what they want or what they need, has completely gone.
Guys, you have to completely go as well, much the way it pains me. Your time is up. The meter has run out. Claire, lovely talking to you. Thanks for your perspective. Thanks, David Miller. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And it's a very important anniversary today, a sad anniversary. Here's Isabel with more.
It's a sad anniversary, but it's also a really positive story. Today marks a year since we lost our fundraising hero, Captain Sir Tom Moore, who, of course, raised over £38 million for the NHS by walking those 100 laps of his garden. We'll never forget that, will we? Well, in June this year, there'll be the first ever Captain Tom Day aimed at empowering older people. And to tell us more about all of this and the foundation that they've set up in his name, Hannah Ingram joins us in the studio. She is his daughter. And a very warm welcome to the programme. And first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know that we actually have spoken before, but it is a difficult day for you, but also one to remember the amazing achievements.
Oh, well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and it's been extraordinary, hasn't it? Can you really imagine that it was nearly 2 years ago, where with that simple act of, well, we can't throw you a 100th birthday party, but walk up and down 100 times and we'll give you £1 a lap. And within 3.5 weeks, nearly £40 million. But the legacy, I think, we as a family feel like we are the guardians of that legacy, because he became a beacon of hope, not just here, but around the world.
He really did. And as we were saying a moment ago, you set up this foundation in his honour, and that allows you to carry on the sort of things that you think that he would really be interested in supporting. So tell us what that would be.
Yeah, we recognise that he had left this imprint on a global scale around hope. And we set up the foundation to inspire hope where it was needed most. But who were we? What was the action? What was our ambition? And we have recently announced in his honour that we will celebrate and empower our ageing population whilst ensuring we show the power of connecting the generations, because that's what happened in our house. It was simply magical.
Because we were just talking about this before we came to the interview, about how you've done something that a lot of people don't do for whatever reason. But when your mother passed away, you took the decision, instead of your father living alone or perhaps having to go into care, that you very much would bring him into the heart of the family, and he would be bedroom by bedroom with your son. Tell us a little bit about what it was like having your father live with you, and how that, you think, has impacted your children's view of older people.
Oh, it was extraordinary. When we asked him to come and live with us, it was because simply we didn't want him to be on his own. We didn't really understand what the magical bonus of it would be. And in fact, what we ended up, I could see it in front of my eyes as a mother, as daughter, wife, mother. I could see this incredible coexistence. And, we still refer to it as grandpa's room, grandpa's bedroom. But the children, they are changed for it. Because we would all queue for my father. And, we'd ask him for business decisions. We'd ask him how to fix the mower. The kids would go with the cricket bat or a thing, and then he'd queue back the other way and say, the app's just fallen off my iPad. Can you put it back, please?
Wow.
And so we had this extraordinary mentoring up and down It was just, it was reciprocal, just amazing. I can't tell you how magical it was.
And a lovely story about your son being in the bedroom next door to your father, and they used to be the last ones to wake in the house, and we used to squabble over the alarm, who would set the alarm clock.
It was actually when they were going to bed, so it would be who stayed up the latest.
Oh, OK.
And they would argue with who's going to put the alarm on, because, of course, no one wanted to trip the alarm. So they would go in and say, oh, still up? Yes, still up. Alarm then? Yes, I'll put the alarm on. And Benji still talks about it today.
I love that. And such lovely memories that will last with your family forever. But it is something that so many people today don't have, that relationship with their grandparents or perhaps with anyone in their dotage, and perhaps that respect is lost a little bit as a result. So you're really hoping that in your father's memory, this National Day will then become one that we can really empower people in their older ages.
Indeed. I think we recognise that we have an ageing population, and many of the developed countries around the world are the same. But somehow, because we live this nuclear family life, we've lost that interconnectivity. But we want to show the wit and the wisdom and the power of that ageing population, bring them back into society. Many are lonely and isolated, but many of our youth are lonely and isolated too. Imagine if we can show the power of that interconnectivity using the wit and the wisdom of our ageing population. It would be extraordinary.
Do you think that your dad lived as long as he did because he had that access to younger generations?
I honestly do. I think when he was widowed at 86, he felt that he'd become invisible to the world. He said to me, Hannah, I've become invisible to the world. But now, since I've lived with you, I've got my visibility back.
I'm sure that having had your dad so close to you in his last few years has made the grief a little bit harder. And there are times you talked about how you consulted him for everything. Do you still do that? You look to ask him and wish you could ask him for advice and guidance?
All the time. I think, our office is just a stone's throw from the house, and still often I'll walk across the road and think, I'll just ask him that, and think, I can't.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had. Often I think, if only I'd asked him that, as we all do. Anyone who's gone through loss understands what that is. So, of course, we feel the loss keenly. He was with us for nearly 14 years.
Oh, and is it sort of reliving the grief every time you have those moments? But unlike most of us, you have this incredible bank of extraordinary memories. What's the proudest one? I mean, so many to choose from. I mean, can't overstate how incredible that amount of money was at a time of national crisis. That money was so badly needed. We were setting up Nightingale hospitals, whatever else it was. £38 million, huge. Is that your proudest memory, or was it seeing that influx of birthday cards for his birthday, which filled a whole hall, or of course, the honour from the Queen?
So many things. Remember, it happened at such a rapid pace. We set out to raise £1,000, and within 3.5 weeks, it was nearly 40 million. But not only that, people from 163 countries, nearly the whole world, engaged. 1.6 million donations. So pride lives for me, for him, for becoming that beacon of hope, but in my family for being the support structure behind it. But of course, there is only one moment of all the moments for him, and that was meeting the Queen.
Oh, really? And that was an amazing moment. Just take us back to that day then, because we obviously remember those pictures, special for so many reasons, because we hadn't seen much of the Queen, had we, at this point? She'd been tucked away shielding. It was gorgeous hot weather, but we were all, as a nation, sort of enjoying the hot weather, but also fearful of this virus. And there was your dad, having become this national hero. I mean, just talk us through that day in Windsor.
It was just amazing. And we got in the car to go, and I said to him, are you nervous? And he went, no, not at all. I'm looking forward to meeting her. And we drove down, and of course it was still semi-lockdown, right? It was the first time she'd come out. And we drove through the gates. I'll never, ever forget it. Because I said to the children, remember this, because we'll never come this way into the castle ever again. We normally go the other way. Yeah. And we drove up, and oh, it was just amazing. Benji and I paced out the route that my father would take to meet the Queen, to make sure he could get there. And they asked if he could kneel. And I said, oh, no, I'm so terribly sorry he can't, because we can't get him down or up. Yeah. And within moments, all of the stalls had disappeared. It was like magic.
Yeah.
But as we stood there, the four of us, because the Queen asked to see us too, we just looked at each other and looked over at my father and knew that this was a moment that everyone could enjoy. But for us, we looked at each other and went, wow. And the connection between them, it was like two souls together.
Well, they'd been through the war together, hadn't they? So what did they talk about? Giving me goosebumps.
Well, I heard it, but he said he'd never repeat it, so I won't. But I will say that he had said it to the press. I hope she's not too heavy-handed with the sword. And clearly someone had made sure she knew that, because she leaned over and said, "Don't worry, I'll be quite gentle."
She's done it a few times, hasn't she? Oh, what a wonderful story. And we can all picture that day so clearly. And unfortunately, because, you know, he became the poster boy for COVID, but it was actually COVID that got him in the end. Just tell us a little bit about, because of course today, a hard day for you as a family. Your father got ill with pneumonia and you were dealing with this privately. And in the end, he caught COVID.
Yeah, what we didn't realise, and he didn't realise, he had silent pneumonia. So it hadn't been picked up at all. We didn't know it, but something wasn't right. So he went into hospital. And that's when we discovered it. But unfortunately, it was there that he also contracted COVID. And so, look, he felt that he was going to live forever, I think. He was certainly, he was asking me to go out to place a bet on him getting to 104.
You know, he is living forever. Do you know, nobody knew who Captain Tom Moore was really before all of this, and that memory will go on and on. Just tell us, how was he treated? I mean, of course, everyone's treated to the highest standards that can possibly be given in an NHS hospital, but given that he'd done this wonderful thing for the health service, what were the staff like during his last days?
Well, I think they were just their very professional selves. Of course, they recognised who he was and felt real joy and pride, I think, at looking after him. And, you know, we were very lucky enough that I was allowed to be with him for that last day of his life.
Because so many people weren't able to be with visitors, and so that was an exception, or you were just lucky at that trust?
Yeah, that trust allowed it.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased that that was the case, of course, for us, and we understand how difficult it was for many who couldn't. We FaceTimed my sister and the children, and there was a moment when I knew that he'd gone. It took him a few hours more to leave us, but there was a moment he was restful, he was peaceful. And, you know, he always said, listen, when I'm gone, I'm gone. He was very straightforward about life. We always talked about death as well, and managing that death for him. And I think because we were able to talk about it, I knew exactly what he wanted, and we hadn't hidden it. So those last days weren't wrought and fraught with some of those anxieties, because I already knew.
Yeah, and you know how wonderful in many ways, there's that old phrase, isn't there, you know, good innings, and to have had such a wonderful long life, but also that chance to say everything you wanted to say at the end. And I'm so pleased for you that happened. Just lastly, because you talked about the foundation and supporting the causes that were close to his heart. What is it in particular that, you know, he wanted for you to be doing with that, do you think?
I think, you know, he was so proud of having a charity in his name. He couldn't quite believe it. And as we celebrate our ageing population, supporting communities that empower our ageing population and empower that connectivity, imagine if he was sitting here now. He would simply be thrilled that we will be looking at community projects and charities to support that ambition.
Well, Hannah Ingram-Moore, it has been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio. So sorry for your loss, but we are so grateful for Captain Tom Moore and everything he did and that you continue to do in his name. Thank you. Over to you, Eamonn.
It's coming up to 10 to 9. You're listening and watching Breakfast here on GB News. Vladimir Putin has accused the United States of forcing his country into war as tensions along the Ukrainian border continue to grow. This comes after the Prime Minister left Ukraine following his warning to Russia that the country will face a package of sanctions at the first sight of an invasion. Our GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White has more.
At key locations along the Ukrainian border, Russian forces continue to mass. Despite international alarm, Moscow says it has no intention of invading its neighbour. But nor does it say when these large-scale military exercises will end. The manoeuvres have sparked intense diplomatic efforts to ease the tensions with Russia, which Western governments fear will end in conflict. But in a clear warning to Moscow, the British Prime Minister flew into the Ukrainian capital to emphasise the UK's support for Kiev.
Today, I've announced a further £88 million of UK funding to support good governance and energy independence in Ukraine. Alongside other countries, we are also preparing a package of sanctions and other measures to be enacted the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukrainian territory.
As well as tens of millions of pounds in additional aid, the UK has stepped up support for the Ukrainian military, with new missile systems and dozens of British personnel training the Ukrainians in their use. In eastern Ukraine, this soldier, a gas drilling specialist in civilian life, has spent 7 years fighting Russian separatists here. He says his comrades are ready to defend their homeland, and any large-scale move by Moscow will cost them dearly.
If they start a military operation here, it will be like Stalingrad for them. We will ensure they're bogged down right across Ukraine.
Ukrainian concerns over Russian aggression are understandable. In 2014, Russian forces entered Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, annexing that region, which is now mostly under Moscow's control. And for years now, in parts of eastern Ukraine, thousands have died as Russian-backed separatists continue to mount a protracted insurgency against Ukrainian forces. Since late last year, there has been a steady build-up of Russian forces along its Ukrainian border, now believed to be in the region of 110,000. A further 30,000 Russian troops are massing on the Belarusian-Ukrainian border to take part in a huge military exercise there. The US and the UK are among the nations planning to help bolster the defences of their allies in the region, like here in Estonia, where American and Belgian jets have been patrolling the airspace here. While over in the Black Sea, Russian naval assets are also massing. These are exercises for now, but manoeuvres with menace. And although the diplomacy continues apace, with brinkmanship, bloodshed is only ever a misstep away. Mark White, GB News.
The latest in the Ukraine situation. Look, very shortly we're going to be talking to the Levelling Up Minister, Secretary of State Michael Gove, on what he plans. Do you believe it? A lot of you have got a lot of very fervent views on this and a lot of complaints. And, you know, a lot of people seem to be affected by the government's housing targets, and they're worried about green spaces, although I would have thought that is part of levelling up, providing homes and providing housing. And, you know, because if people don't have anywhere to live, you know, it's where do the workers live?
Well, exactly,
but
then we have all this empty infrastructure, don't we? Empty buildings. I drove past a squat, I'm sure, this morning. And
brown sites.
There's all that debate about using those. But anyway, we're putting all of your thoughts to Michael Gove, loads of them, as I say, pages and pages.
Maybe not all of them. Maybe
summarising
7 or 8 of them.
Yes, and we'll be talking about that and looking at the rest of the day's news. But first of all, here's your forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for many, but a cloudy start as well. I'm hopeful that there will be some brighter weather at times in the south, particularly by the afternoon. Whilst further north, the weather front is moving west to east. It's a fairly weak front, but it is bringing thicker cloud to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, along with some outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. That rain and drizzle tending to become persistent in places, particularly over the Pennines, Southern Uplands, West Highlands and parts of Northern Ireland. So dull and damp across some northern and western parts of the country, but brighter skies developing the Midlands, southern and southeast England, parts of eastern Scotland at times as well. Shetland in the far north seeing a few more showers and staying cold here, whilst it's much milder elsewhere, double figures widely across the country. Feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine, where we get some of that in central and southern England. Into the evening then, and thicker cloud once again spreads across the vast majority of the country, and with winds coming from a mild direction, well, temperatures aren't going to drop particularly, and even in Shetland they'll stay above freezing. So a frost-free start for virtually all of us on Thursday morning. A cloudy start though, with those outbreaks of rain continuing for parts of Scotland, heavy at times in the west, particularly over the Highlands. And it really turns more showery as we head through the morning tomorrow, with some heavy bursts at times. But for many, it's looking like a dry afternoon initially. Some sunshine there for central and eastern England before heavier rain moves into the far northwest as we end the day. This is an active weather front, and it's going to clear southeastwards by Thursday night, and into Friday it will turn the temperatures down, but it will introduce brighter skies and blustery showers for Friday itself. So a mixture of sunny spells and showers on Friday, feeling colder in the wind.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good to see you again. It is 1 minute to 9. This is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Now, all morning we've been asking your views about the government's levelling up strategy. And now we are joined by the man appointed to serve as Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove. Very good morning to you. This is a really interesting idea that you've come up with, that this 12-point plan is going to be enshrined in law. Just tell us what we can expect from it all.
Yeah, levelling up is the central mission of the government, and Boris has been very clear that what we need to do is to change the economic model in this country. Power and wealth has been too concentrated in London and the South East. We don't want to do anything to undermine London's success as a global super city, but we do want wealth to be spread and power to be spread more fairly across society. And so we've got 12 missions covering everything from education to health, from science to housing, which lay out how we can make sure that we can make opportunity more equal.
Secretary of State, I have to say, you're a man of a good reputation in running a department or doing practical things. You have that reputation. But I think, how do you give people confidence that this is not all headline and no substance? And, you know, I go with that headline, we've got devolution, revolution, as if this would be about Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland, but it's not. So, you know, people do, I think you can understand how people see the Johnson administration as a lot of headlines and very little substance sometimes. How do you reassure people?
You know, sure. No, sure. I mean, and I think that I can understand that people are cynical and sceptical about politicians at the moment. Absolutely. So that's why we're laying out some ways in which progress can be measured and people can make a judgment about whether or not we've been true to our word and we've delivered. So, again, right at the beginning of this Parliament, the Prime Minister spelt out the additional investment and commitments that we were making in terms of additional police officers, doctors and nurses. We're now going further and laying out a long-term plan, and in it we talk about the additional numbers of people who, for example, will be getting high-quality skills training, and people will be able to judge whether or not we've actually delivered, because these are numbers you can't fudge or finagle.
And I just wanted to ask you on figures, because there was a lot of criticism over the weekend that this wasn't necessarily new money that was being invested into this, and you'll be familiar with the National Audit Office, who've come out saying that the Treasury guidance on how to ensure this policy will work before committing money has been ignored, and that ministers have wasted opportunities, and that they're relying on research funded by the EU to put all of this in place.
Yeah, no. I take very seriously reports from the National Audit Office and others who wanted to spend public money effectively, because ultimately it is your viewers' money, it's taxpayers' money. It doesn't grow on trees, it's produced by the hard work of your viewers, so we've got to spend it carefully and appropriately. On the argument that there is no new money here, I think that's a slightly odd argument, because the Chancellor allocated at the spending review big chunks of cash to individual government departments, and now those government departments, including my own, are explaining how that money is going to be allocated. That is how government works, and it's critically important, of course, that not just Parliament, but also GBNews and its presenters hold people like me to account for how we spend your viewers' money.
Yeah, but you know, this is not just about pounds, shillings and pence. You know, I look at this, it's about, we were reporting from Wolverhampton today, and you can see it's about the soul of a town centre, the fabric of the people who are defined by how their town or their city is defined. And a lot of those towns and cities are decimated. The industry's gone, the shopping, the high streets have gone and whatever. Can you see how your job maybe is more than pounds, shillings and pence, and how important this is?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think the thing is that cities like Wolverhampton or Middlesbrough are places that people are intensely proud of, and quite right too. And they have a great heritage and a great legacy built on industrial innovation. But they've faced difficult times over the last couple of decades, and as you say, you can see that in the way in which the high streets aren't looking as they should, and the whole life of the city doesn't reflect the love for the community that people there have. That is why we need to advance on a broad front. That's why we need to both invest in innovation and science in order to power the next industrial revolution, but it's also why we need to take action, for example, in order to make sure that we deal with landlords who leave shops empty on high streets. Those voids, those vacancies contribute to a sense of, a spiral of downward activity, and we've got to do it all. We've got to both make sure that our high streets are attractive and livable, but also make sure that there are high-paying, high-productivity jobs for everyone, particularly in communities like Wolverhampton.
But how do you ensure, whether you're the minister for this in the future or governments change and whatever, how do you ensure that some administration sticks with this and sees it through? Because you're not going to do this in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, are you?
No, and that's why we've set out long-term missions to 2030, and I'm sure that there'll be some argy-bargy in the House of Commons later between myself and Labour, but I hope that there's a broad agreement that this is the direction of travel we should all be going on as a country, and I hope Labour will hold me to account for moving in this direction, but I'm confident that this is what your viewers want to see. In the 2016 Brexit referendum, one of the reasons why so many people voted Leave is they wanted to shake up SW1 and say, look, whatever you're obsessed about in your bubble, however successful you and your friends are, there are people out here in the country who have not shared in that success. And we want a government that is as focused on Wolverhampton as it is on Westminster. And we've got that message, and I think the whole political system is getting that message now as well.
Just want to bring this back to money, because you'll be aware as well of the headlines in the Mail talking about the waste of money that's been spent on PPE contracts.
Yes.
We've seen fraud, £4.3 million being written off by the government. And people do, as you agree, really care how taxpayers' money is spent, or indeed make sure it isn't wasted. So give us a sense of where this is going. We are aware of your part of this 350-page document being a war on obesity, a war on, say, Greggs, the bakery. How is this money being allocated? Where can people expect to see the investment?
Well, you're absolutely right. People will look at reports about how public money is spent. They'll want to make sure that we're vigilant on that PPE issue. We were doing everything we could at the height of the global pandemic, when there was a global race for this stuff, to get it to the front line. And now, of course, the pandemic has passed, the price of PPE has fallen. So, you know, the figures that are being discussed are the difference between the price at the height and the price now. But on your broader point about how we spend money now, we're making sure that we spend money principally on research, development, science, education, because that's what drives economic growth. But we're also aware that when it comes to public health, one of the challenges that we face is that obesity contributes to diabetes, which contributes to one of the biggest drains on the NHS. If we can ensure that people are supported to have the right diet, the right exercise, and they can keep fit and healthy, that's good for them and their well-being, it's good for the NHS. But finally, I would never want to go to war on Greggs, because I rely on Greggs to keep me going most mornings.
You know, just looking at you and talking to you, and you're from Scotland, Mr. Gove, I'm from Northern Ireland. Isn't the real litmus test for what you're trying to do with levelling up the day when people don't have to leave Scotland or leave Northern Ireland or leave Wales or leave the northeast of England to come to London?
I completely agree. One of the things that struck me when I was visiting a further education college in Teesside was a poster that said, "Stay local and go far." And I completely agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with people making their way in the world however they want to. Ambition is a good thing. But you're absolutely right. It should be the case that whether it's in Ballymena or in Aberdeen, in Aberystwyth or in Middlesbrough, that there should be good jobs and you can stay close to the place that you love but still achieve everything you want.
I was watching you in an interview with Andrew Neil, and in it, Michael Gove, you said that the Prime Minister deserved to receive Christian forgiveness. Now, should that Christian forgiveness therefore be shown to the thousands of other people who have been prosecuted for lockdown breaches and perhaps their fines returned? That would be a sort of levelling up, wouldn't it?
No, I understand the point, it's impossible for me to go through all of the cases that occurred during lockdown. But you know, the only point I was making, and it wasn't specific to any individual, is to err is human. People were under, you know, under pressure. So many people did the right thing, and they should be applauded. When people make mistakes, they should apologise and take responsibility. But I was just arguing to get things in perspective. I wasn't trying to say you should wipe the slate clean, that you should ignore the mistakes that people will have made.
For you, what does taking responsibility mean for you? I mean, you know, the Prime Minister at the moment has your support. We're just hearing that Tobias Ellwood this morning has said that he's lost his support. He will be submitting a letter of no confidence into the 1922 committee. There are real questions about whether or not Boris can continue to lead your party and indeed the country, aren't there?
Yes, but I'm a 100% supporter of Boris, and I think that the strategy that we're outlining today is evidence of him keeping faith, the whole government keeping faith with the mission that we were given in 2019. And the key question is, can people trust us to deliver? Today we're setting out policies which I hope deliver on what people asked us to do in 2019. And of course there will be criticisms pointed at the Prime Minister and at me. When we make mistakes, we apologise. I've made mistakes, I'll apologise, but I want to get on with the job and make sure that we have that shift of wealth and power to people who've been overlooked and undervalued for too long.
Taking responsibility is just an apology. That's all he needed to do.
Well, again, with respect to all of these allegations, fairly reported, and quite right too. We've got a free media and we should celebrate that. But when it comes to the actual allocation of responsibility for these events, then we just need to wait for the Met inquiry. Now, I know that is frustrating. I know it's frustrating for your viewers when you hear that, but ultimately we just need to observe the proper processes here, and then once that investigation is completed, then appropriate action and responsibility taking follows.
Well, Michael Gove, could we wish you every success in this incredibly important project that you've got and that you're announcing today, and it's in all our interests, in the interests of the whole country. Godspeed with it. Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you. Thanks very much, Eamonn. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Michael Gove, Secretary of State for Levelling Up. We're going to take a look now at your headlines.
Russia has accused the West of deliberately trying to lure it into war with Ukraine.
In his first public comments in almost 6 weeks, the Russian President Vladimir Putin says the US was ignoring Moscow's security concerns about NATO forces in Europe.
Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood has been further arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill. The 20-year-old was first arrested on Sunday on suspicion of rape and assault of a young woman after social media images and videos were posted online.
Shoppers have been hit by the highest price rises since 2012. The British Retail Consortium data shows shop inflation almost doubled over the past month, from 0.8% in December to 1.5% last month.
Researchers have found that magnetized seeds can be guided through the brain and then heated to destroy brain tumours.
Yes, successful tests on mice suggest the technique could be used on humans, increasing patient survival rates.
The Duchess of Cambridge says she's thrilled to become patron of the Rugby Football Union and the Rugby Football League. She'll be the first member of the royal family to take over one of Prince Harry's former roles. Her affiliation with English rugby now puts her in direct competition with her husband, who is, of course, patron of the Welsh Rugby Union. We'll take a break there. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to A&E doctor, Dr. Mika Okocha, about your health concerns.
And
after
we'll
the
be
break,
talking to Cameron Hutchins from Hollyoaks about his health concerns or the resolution to them. That's in just a moment. See you soon.
hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News. OK, the time is 9:15. We're talking about cystic fibrosis next. It is the UK's most common inherited disease, and it really attacks the lungs and can make life incredibly difficult for people that suffer with it. And we're joined in the studio now by actor Cameron Hutchinson, who was himself born with cystic fibrosis, but you've just landed your dream job. People will know you as the bad boy on Hollyoaks, something that you could only have dreamed of doing when you were growing up.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's been a dream of mine for a while to be an actor, but due to ill health, I've not been available to do any acting work. But thankfully, down to this new drug, it has given me the chance to pursue a career in acting and live life a lot more on my terms.
So this drug is called Kaftrio, and it's now available on the NHS after a big campaign dubbed the Wonder Drug.
Yeah.
And just explain to people what a life-changing thing this is, because when we were born, I mean, you're 29, people born with cystic fibrosis were told life expectancy of about 30.
Yeah.
And you're 29 years old, and you're living a fulsome life now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the first drug which it rectifies the root cause of CF. It doesn't just treat the symptom. And it really is the first drug of its kind. And I've been on it for just over a year now, and the changes to my life have just been incredible.
And Cameron, what is the root cause of cystic fibrosis?
It's a genetic condition. So this is not an antibiotic. It's what they call a genetic modulator. So it corrects the gene. So I've got 29 years worth of damage to my body.
Yes.
And it's now
rectifying that.
It is, yeah.
How amazing that is the way modern medical science can work. We were just doing that news story there about mice and
the brain
electrodes
scans
through the brain and things. Just incredible to treat cancer tumours. So it is a fantastic advancement, because you've had experience of this in your own life.
Well, one of my very best friends has cystic fibrosis, and so I've seen the journey with the nebulizers to take all the antibiotics in, the steroid treatments that she'd had to have. She had to take Creon, which is a pig's enzyme, so that she could digest her food. Do you still have to take that?
Yeah, I still have to take that. I've not been able to come off all my treatment, but I used to have to do 4 to 6 hours a day of breathing treatments, nebulizers, really hard, exhausting
That's
physios.
to get all the mucus out of your lungs.
Yep, correct. Yeah. So it's gone from doing 6 hours a day, hooked up to a drip, hospital admissions, toxic IVs, to now I do 20 minutes of breathing exercises in the morning, and I'm good for the day.
And your dream job.
And your home. When you hear that, does that give you like a tingle or anything?
No, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I auditioned in October, and I got cast in November, and it's absolutely brilliant. And just hope it leads to more.
But you say that's his dream job. I think that's one of his
dreams. Yeah.
Because the fact is, you tried to be a golf pro. Yeah.
Cheers, Eamonn.
That was a compliment, I think.
No. So I played golf around 10 to 12 years. I turned professional at about 22.
Yes.
I stopped playing to pursue the acting.
Not because of the cystic fibrosis?
No, not necessarily because of the cystic fibrosis. I was fairly healthy when I was playing golf. But I had a good amateur career, and I was in the England setup and played for my county, and managed to have a few wins. But no, I said this new drug it's completely changed things for me, and and so many others as well, and it's now just been released for 6 to 12-year-olds as well.
So that's amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And what people don't realise, 98% of men with cystic fibrosis are unable to have children.
Yeah.
But you, through IVF and genetic screening, have had probably better than any of these dreams, jobs or successes in sport. Is your own little bundle of joy?
Yeah. So my wife and we went through IVF, and on the second run of IVF, Heather became pregnant, and we now have a little boy. He's called Harvey.
Aww.
And he's incredible. And again, thankful to these new drugs. Harvey's got his dad.
It is amazing. So much good in your life. It's like a rebirth, because as Isabel was saying, maybe when you were 20, you thought the life expectancy was about now.
Oh, absolutely. And back in 2019, I was really, really poorly. It was probably the most ill I'd ever been. Yeah. And I was thinking, I don't know how long this can go on for. And we knew that there was a drug out there. We knew that there was this new Wonder drug out in America.
And just wanted to get it.
Just wanted to get it in the UK, and now, thankfully, it's here.
Well, continued good health. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and meeting to you.
Thank you for the story.
We look forward to seeing you at 6:30.
Thanks for coming in.
God bless. Thank you very much indeed. We've been asking you, we're hearing about Cameron's health issues there, and a fantastic positive result there. If you have any health worries or ailments that are keeping you awake at night, well, to answer all your questions, we've got NE doctor Amika Okrocha. Amika.
Oh, he's frozen.
Are you there, Amika? Can you hear me? Have you frozen?
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's there, Amika. Right. Amika, look, we've got a lot of people obviously want to get in touch with you, and there's so many stories in the news today, medical-wise as well. Where are we going to start, Isabel?
Let's go for this one, HRT. I'm interested in the news about this over-the-counter HRT therapy, but I'm concerned about the side effects and can't get a doctor's appointment to discuss it. What should I do? This is from Priya in Manchester.
Okay, so this basically depends on what kind of hormone replacement therapy she's been given. Because as you know, hormone replacement therapy, it helps with a lot of the symptoms that a lot of people have when it comes to the menopause. And it depends on the side effects she's actually experiencing. So for me, obviously, I don't know exactly what she's taking and what she's experiencing, but I say best to do is make sure, one, with many medications, such as hormone replacement therapy, you may not see the benefits immediately when you start taking the drug. As we know, it's hormone replacement therapy, and hormones play a big part in how you feel in your mood, stuff like vaginal dryness, such as hot flushes and other menopausal symptoms. What she needs to do is, one, have some faith in the drug, take it for a while. If she's still experiencing those kind of symptoms and side effects, one, go to the GP who prescribed her the drug or speak to a specialist. But a lot of people who take hormone replacement therapy won't see the benefits immediately. And that's what I try to encourage. I was like, okay, listen, take the medication. If you're feeling these kind of side effects, keep taking it. However, if you don't get the benefits, then go to your doctor.
What do you think about this whole proposal today that you'll have been to your doctor for a consultation and then basically you can self-prescribe, you can go to the chemist, you can get your own prescription over the counter as and when suits you?
So normally I always, want to get self-prescribing because obviously a lot of people don't exactly know what they're taking when they're taking it. However, with this, I think it's actually a benefit because with hormone replacement therapy, there are very few side effects when you're actually taking the drug. And it's a lot of women who actually experience it more than we actually know. So I actually encourage them to, if they can, get hold of medication. So I think it's actually a beneficial thing. It's a good thing.
OK, Dr. Amika, next question is from Rachel in Bristol. She's got 3 small children. She says she's really worried about measles. There's, of course, all this news, isn't there, that 1 in 10 children are getting measles because they haven't been getting the MMR. How can I protect my kids and what should I do if I think they have it?
So the first thing, obviously, is to make sure they get vaccinated. So measles, mumps, rubella, MMR is part of the childhood vaccination program when they're about 13 months and then again. So they'll get 2 doses of the MMR. So first thing is make sure they're vaccinated. That's the beneficial thing. Other than that, measles still is quite rare in the UK. Yes, there is a rise on it. And I think a part of it is due to vaccine hesitancy, which may be linked to the COVID vaccine. We're not sure. But a part of it is due to that. And I think what she needs to do is, 1, make sure they're vaccinated. 2, if they do experience symptoms of a viral illness, what we know is viral illnesses, when you get them, they have very, very similar symptoms of all of them. However, if the kids get rashes all the time, very similar to measles, and I've seen them a lot in A&E.
I bet.
Parents will get worried and they'll come in with kids with rashes. But the main thing is, 1, if you do have any problems, consult your GP or doctor or bring them to A&E like us. Or if they have just viral symptoms, bring them to A&E if you need to.
And what does a measles rash look like? Because, of course, all parents are trained from the minute they're given a bundle to look out for the meningitis rash with a glass. But what does a measles rash look like?
So unlike meningitis with the non-blanching rash, unlike meningitis, measles rash is fairly a simple rash. So it's hard to distinguish it from other rashes. So you're going to come up with lumps and bumps, like general redness, general scratching, itching, similar to any other rash. And that's the thing. So because measles is quite rare in the UK, it's going to be hard to distinguish it from anything else. That's why if you feel that your child has a rash that you've never seen before and suffering viral symptoms, bring them into us. We can see them, look at them, do some blood tests and distinguish it from anything else.
OK, I was going to ask, is it different from German measles in how it presents?
Sorry?
Is it different from German measles or are they all the same thing?
No. So the thing is, you're not going to be able to distinguish it on symptomatic presentation alone. they're going to come in with the same things in terms of the rash and the fever-like symptoms and the viral-like symptoms.
Dr. Mika Okracha, thank you very much indeed for your surgery today, and we'll make an appointment with you sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. If you need to come to A&E, come see me.
That is the definition of telemedicine right there. It's the future, they say, isn't it? Telemedicine's telephone medicine. Now it's actually on the telly for you.
With a big smile too.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching today. We'll be back in the morning to do it all again. Have a good day.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for many, but a cloudy start as well. I'm hopeful that there will be some brighter weather at times in the south, particularly by the afternoon. Whilst further north, the weather front is moving west to east. It's a fairly weak front, but it is bringing thicker cloud to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, along with some outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle. That rain and drizzle tending to become persistent in places, particularly over the Pennines, southern uplands, West Highlands and parts of Northern Ireland. So dull and damp across some northern and western parts of the country, but brighter skies developing the Midlands, southern and southeast England, parts of eastern Scotland at times as well. Shetland in the far north seeing a few more showers and staying cold here, whilst it's much milder elsewhere, double figures widely across the country. Feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine, where we get some of that in central and southern England. Into the evening then, and thicker cloud once again spreads across the vast majority of the country, and with winds coming from a mild direction, well, temperatures aren't going to drop particularly, and even in Shetland they'll stay above freezing. So a frost-free start for virtually all of us on Thursday morning. A cloudy start though, with those outbreaks of rain continuing for parts of Scotland. Heavy at times in the west, particularly over the Highlands. And it really turns more showery as we head through the morning tomorrow, with some heavy bursts at times, but for many it's looking like a dry afternoon initially. Some sunshine there for central and eastern England before heavier rain moves into the far northwest as we